Okay, everyone. Thank you. We're good to go? Yes. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the May 5th, 2023 Board of Behavioral Sciences meeting. We are here in Orange County today. My name is Max Esposti. I'm the chairperson, pronounced he, him. Before we convene, I would like to remind everyone that is present that the board is a consumer protection agency that is charged with administering and enforcing the board laws. Where protections of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protections of the public shall be paramount. For each agenda item, there will be a chance for the public to offer comments, and each comment will have 3 minutes to comment. Members, during the roll call, please, board members, just introduce yourself if you're a licensee or public member, and introduce yourself to the public. And I think now it's the time for Christina to take the roll call. Hi, Christina. Good morning.
Hello, good morning. Eleanor Uribe.
President LCSW.
Dr. Annette Walker.
Good morning, Dr. Annette Walker, pronouns she, her, and hers, President and Public Board Member.
Thank you. Abigail Ortega.
Present LCSW member.
Justin Huft.
Present LMFT member.
Susan Friedman.
Present public member.
Wendy Strack.
Present public member.
Christopher Jones.
Present, LEP member, Vice Chair.
Max Desposti.
Present, board chair, and public member.
John Sovek.
Present, LMFT, pronouns he, him.
Ross Ehrlich.
Present public member.
Kelly Ranasinghe.
Present public member.
Yvette Caceres-Willis.
Present public member.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful, Christina. Thank you. Before we begin, just a light invitation, coming with care, that we have a full board agenda today, so let's try to stay on topic on the agenda items. It is our duty to begin with, but also an invitation, because we want to make sure that we don't leave any of the agenda items out. There is an invitation that perhaps we will have a lunch break around noon, so even for our guests that are present today, we will take a slight break for us to check out from the rooms around 11:15, so you had time to go and take care of that for about 10 minutes. Another housekeeping items is that the items 21, 22, and 23 in our agenda, and 34 will not be discussed today, so they're being withdrawn from the discussion. We already done the introductions with the board, and also now is the time for the public to introduce themselves if they wish to do so. So feel free to come forward to the podium and tell us who you are. Thank you. Wonderful, Rebecca. Is the mic recording? We check all the mics but that one. Yes, yes. Listen. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Kristen Roscoe with the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists.
Wonderful.
Good morning, Ben Caldwell, MFT, pronouns he, him.
Thank you, Ben. Anyone else? I don't see anyone else over there. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. I think now we can move to agenda item number 12, which is the consent calendar. Is the possible approval of the February 2 and 3rd board meeting minutes. Just a second, I'm trying to fix my mic because it has a feedback. It's making a sound. Are you guys okay? You hear a sound there? It's a little bit, yeah, it's that screeching. Like that? It still does galère. And I took all my devices out. My Apple too. So.
Probably the banana.
It's my Apple.
It's the combination of banana and
Everything. Okay, so we were just opening item 12, thank you for the help. We were just opening item 12 consent calendar. First of all, I would like to know if there are any members that would like to add or take away anything because they might have noted something that, a typo, or mistakes in the consent agendas. This is the time to speak. Otherwise, do we have a motion to approve the consent item agenda?
Move to approve.
Okay, and, sorry, for the dates of May 2 and 3rd, 2023. February
Thank
2
you.
and 3rd.
I'd amend my motion, move to approve the dates of February 2nd through 3rd, 2023 board meeting minutes, item 12.
Wonderful, so that's a motion from Kelly Naranisange, and who else would like to second? Wendy Strack, thank you so much. We have a motion on the floor. Christina, can we call the vote, please?
Yes. Eleanor Uribe?
I apologize. Coffee is not kicking in yet. We need to ask for public comments. If there are any public comments about the motion on the floor for our board member or for the people in the audience. Thank you. Legal. Okay, doesn't look we have any. Now we can proceed with the vote. Thank you.
Eleanor Uribe?
Abstain.
Dr. Annette Walker?
Yes.
Abigail Ortega?
Yes.
Justin Huff?
Yes.
Susan Friedman?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Chris Jones?
Yes.
Max Disposti?
Yes.
John Sovek?
Yes.
Ross Ehrlich?
Yes.
Kelly Ronasinghe?
Yes.
Yvette Caceres Willis?
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We're now moving to item 13, which is the board chair report. As you know from the material that's been published, there is just we always put the member attendance report also for transparency with our audience and the members of the BBS. The report showed that the board members' attendees for the past few months and the past 2 years, and it also includes the committee meeting. In this case, during the current fiscal year. So if you see any incongruences, anything that we missed, that maybe you weren't there and you were assigned to be there or vice versa, please let the staff know now at this time so that we can make any corrections. But we always want to invite the public and our board member to pay attention to that. The next, in my board report, we have staff recognition. We have amazing people that contributed to the BBS for many, many years. And in particular, I would like to acknowledge, because they are not here, Lee Lilas, I hope I pronounced it correctly. Lee is an LMFT evaluator within the board licensing team. She's celebrating 5 years of services with the board. Thank you so much, Lee. We really appreciate your work. The second person will be Raquel Peña. Raquel is an enforcement with the board consumer complaint team and is celebrating 15 years with the board. Impressive. Thank you, Raquel. And then we have Cynthia Barnett. Cynthia is the manager of the registrations, examinations, and cashiering unit. Cynthia has 25 years of state services. Most of those years have been with this board. So we are so much appreciating Cynthia, but all of you that today celebrate your mark of your service with the BBS. So congratulations to all of you. If you're listening, we really appreciate your work, and the board thanks you for all your service. So we're moving to item 14, which is the Department of Consumer Affairs update. I know that we have Melissa Gear here that is going to do a report for us. Welcome and good morning, Melissa. Melissa is from the DCA Legislative Affairs and will be presenting an update on the Department of Consumer Affairs.
I'm sorry, you did your script wrong.
She's,
I apologize for that. She's from Board and Bureau Relations.
Okay, thank you.
My fault.
Yes, yes.
No problem. Hello and good morning, Chair Disposti. I hope I said that correctly. And Vice Chair Jones, Executive Officer Sodogren, and members of the board. I am Melissa Gear, Deputy Director for Board and Bureau Relations, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide the Department of Consumer Affairs update this morning. Oh, sorry. I'm so used to using my hand mouse. So bear with me. I have several updates that I will share with you this morning, but first I would like to congratulate members Friedman, Sovek, and Uribe on their confirmation by the Senate. In addition, in honor of Public Service Recognition Week, which we celebrate on May 7th through the 13th, I want to begin by thanking you and the dedicated board staff for all of your hard work that you do daily. DCA will be kicking off this important week with a department-wide appreciation email to staff and other messaging highlighting the essential work DCA employees do every day. Thank you, and we are grateful for your service. Next, I want to update you on our recent DEI efforts. Established last fall, the department's DEI steering committee is comprised of 12 executive leaders from the boards, bureaus, and department and has been working on many items, including updating the strategic planning process, training, and development of an informational DEI fact sheet, which was distributed to board leadership. The strategic planning process has been updated to embed DEI into the process, which includes a survey, DEI section in the environmental scan, video messages, and brief training video. DCA's solid team will be reaching out to you, to your executive officer, to develop or update new strategic plans. In addition, all DCA's solid trainers have completed a 50-hour diversity, equity, and inclusion training certification program through the University of Massachusetts. On April 28, 2023, Director Kirkmeyer issued a memorandum on DCA's commitment to employees to increase the availability of DEI courses through DCA's solid training unit. A DEI section has been added to the homepage of the Learning Management System, or LMS, and employees can access and register now for 3 courses available in June 2023. Over the coming months, additional courses and educational information will be available. DCA's first Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion fact sheet has been released. It was developed as an informational tool and includes the department's 3 DEI initiatives, memorializes DCA services that support DEI efforts, and includes DEI terminology as it applies to DCA. On May 12, 2023, the DEI Steering Committee will hold its quarterly meeting in person and will elect a chairperson and vice chairperson. The committee will also discuss training, strategic planning, and DEI activities through the end of this calendar year, as well as membership composition and processes to expand membership. The DEI Steering Committee's work continues, and I look forward to updating you in the months ahead on our progress. I also have some important reminders about board member trainings, travel expense claims, and BMOT. First, there are 2 DCA-wide mandatory trainings for 2023. This includes sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness. All DCA employees and appointees, including board and advisory committee members, will need to complete the sexual harassment prevention training this year. Board members must take the 2-hour supervisory training, and advisory committee members must take the 1-hour non-supervisory training. This training is required every odd-numbered year and is online, self-paced, in approximately 2 hours. Board members with an assigned DCA email, which is dca.ca.gov, are required to complete the Information Security Awareness Fundamentals training. The training addresses everyone's role in protecting DCA data and information. The training is online and required every year. Both the sexual harassment prevention training and information security awareness training are available in the department's learning management system. For more information, a mandatory trainings page has been created to help members identify, access, and track specified trainings. The page includes direct links to mandatory trainings as well as pertinent information and policies specific to these training courses. You can go to dca.ca.gov and click on the DCA Board Member Resource Center page under Required Board Member Training. You can also reach out to Yvonne Durantes or myself. Second, as the fiscal year comes to an end, please submit your travel expense claims, or TECs, as soon as possible, but no later than 5 p.m. on Wednesday, June 8th. Claims submitted after this date will be processed. However, they will not be paid until July 2023. For questions regarding travels, please contact me. Third, board members must complete BMONT within 1 year of their appointment or reappointment. On June 20th, 2023, BMONT will be offered in person in Sacramento and again on October 10th at a location to be determined. Members can register for this training via LMS. Lastly, I would like to share some information about virtual meetings and the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act and the federal portability law in that order. As all of you are aware, legislation passed last year amending provisions of the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act to extend the ability of state bodies such as DCA's boards and bureaus to conduct public meetings virtually through July 1st. Absent the passing of new legislation to extend these provisions, DCA's boards and bureaus will not be allowed to conduct meetings virtually after July 1. DCA is aware of legislation recently introduced, SB 544, Laird, which removes certain teleconference requirements from the Open Meeting Act. The bill was recently amended to do the following. 1, require members of a state body participating remotely to disclose whether any individuals 18 years of age or older are present in the room at the remote location and the general nature of the member's relationship with those individuals. And 2, require state bodies to end or adjourn a meeting upon discovering that a means of remote participation required by the bill has failed and cannot be restored. This bill does not include an urgency clause and would not take effect until January 1st, 2024. Boards and bureaus should be prepared to conduct public meetings in person in the interim beginning July 1st, 2023. On January 5th, 2023, a new federal law took effect that enables service members and their spouses who hold professional licenses in a different state to practice in California within the same professional discipline at a similar scope of practice if they are required to relocate to California due to their military orders. Since becoming aware of the new law, DCA has been collaborating with agency on how best to implement it. DCA will share information as it becomes available. In the meantime, should your board receive an inquiry from a service member or spouse regarding this new law, please contact DCA Legal Affairs. Finally, DCA submitted its 2021-2022 annual report to the legislature, and the report is now available on the DCA website. This annual report includes a new design and additional reporting metrics such as military licensing data now required for all DCA boards and bureaus. We hope you will take time to review this impressive compilation of the valuable work of the boards and bureaus. Lastly, I would like to thank you again for this opportunity and for all the work you do to protect California's consumers. I welcome any questions from the board.
Thank you so much, Ms. Geertz. It's a lot of information and all very useful. So thank you so much for sharing it with us. Are there any questions from the members of the board first, or comments, or anything you would like to share or ask to Ms. Geertz? Yes, Dr. Walker.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. And thank you. It's nice to see you and meet you. Just a little bit more about the board member trainings. Not to have you go back through that, but would I find those trainings available in the LMS?
Yes.
On that side. So that so to see what you just said, I should go there.
Correct. And you're talking about the DEI trainings or the mandatory trainings?
The mandatory trainings.
The mandatory
Although
trainings.
I do appreciate the DEI trainings as well, but that's not open to us.
DEI trainings would be open to board members as well. So, yes. And you
Good
could
to
find
know.
those in the LMS system.
Oh, thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
That's excellent.
that was very useful because I was not
Yeah.
aware of that. So thank you for asking that
Yeah,
question.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other comments or questions from members of the board? From the members in the audience, any questions? Ms. Kier?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your time today, for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Max, this is Christina. I just
Yes.
wanted to add a couple of things to some of the information presented.
Yes.
So the travel expense claims, that June 8th deadline is actually my deadline. So if you can submit your claims before that date, that would be much appreciated. And the second thing is the information security training is not required by this board. So you are required to take the board member training if you haven't done that yet, and the sexual harassment prevention training. And you can also direct any questions about that to me.
Wonderful. Thank you for the clarification. I also want an opportunity to thank you and the staff for always keeping us on our duty and diligence about performing and taking the trainings at the appropriate time. So really appreciate the team effort to make sure that we're all compliant with the requirements. So thank you. As we are closing this agenda item, we're moving to agenda item 15, which is our elections of the board chairperson, the vice chairperson. For those of you that are new, have not participated to this election process, every board member in the room freely can suggest and to propose their candidates. It is kind to perhaps not to surprise the candidate and just, surprise them all of a sudden. I want you to be a board chair, I want to be a vice board chair. It's always good to have had conversation prior so people don't have to be forced to put on the spot. So that's our recommendation. Again, you're still free to do what your heart tells you. But the process, and also I wanted to thank our staff, in particular executive officer that has sent just a few days ago. It's a document that was proposed, I read it, I forgot the name, in regards to the board training, responsibility when it comes to chairperson. What was the name of the document?
So yeah, that's what I want to present. There's a question that was brought up yesterday about training for board presidents, and DCA does a really good job of kind of giving you some information in that. What I presented there yesterday, or the board kind of distributed to you, was the DCA's board president training manual. It is an overview, so there's a lot of questions that might still kind of, you might have for that. But I think what I was explaining to you, I know there's maybe some hesitancy or some nervousness if you're nominated. It's really I think it's a collaborative process between me and the board president to kind of guide through the process, and we create, kind of the way we work together, and with the training with DCA and with us, with conversations with me, we'll get you through the process, and it'll be good. So just wanted to put that in there.
Thank you. I find it very useful, informative, but also as a reminder of the legal responsibilities of our role and setting by example, and also the responsibility that we carry in these roles as board members in general, but in particular as board chairs and vice chairs. So for my last term as a board chair, and I just would like to make a proposal for a board chair and vice chair that obviously the interest parties have been consulted, so they're not surprised by this offer, and we still have to go through the process of them accepting the nomination publicly, and then we can open the floor to other possible nominations if available, and then we go by vote if there are other nominations. As you place your nominations, if there are any, please make a remark about the reason why you're nominating that individuals. I can tell you that this is off the record. No, it is on the record, but it's, all of you on the board are fully capable to assault the functions of board chairs and vice chairs. So this is not about capabilities. It's about also obviously time and dedication. And in the case that in my case, and then making the proposal of the board chair and vice chairs also has to do with time serving on the board. So seniority does have a factor, at least from my perspective, and then also their advocacy and work as well. So without further ado, my nominations for as a future board chair is for Chris Johns, Here on my left, you all know him for board chair. And do we need to do the acceptance first? Or
That would be great.
that, the legal says will be great. It's not a recommendation when she does that.
Thank you, Max. I do accept the nomination. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair. And as vice chair, I propose Wendy Strack, which also she was consulted before this nomination.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, I do accept.
I have a motion.
Thank you. And I would like to share a little bit about, as I mentioned before, the reason why I made this nomination. I mentioned the history of these two. I'm the senior person on the board. It's hard to say that. I have more seniority. And actually, and also we look at seniority, but also we look at advocacy. I know that I'm going to make a comment here that Chris Jones has been an advocate, even before it was a board member, has been harassing the board for a while now. And so we heard his voice previously, before he was even a board member. So we appreciate also the support and the presence and the determination. And as well for Wendy Strack, also being among one of the members, they are seniors. There were other members that also have years of tenure on the board. They were consultant. They were not available at this moment to serve in that capacity. So just for the record. And also for Wendy as well, the participations in the committees and the work and the contribution that Wendy has given as a public member. Another element that I like to bring to the attention, which is not a law by any means, but it's always nice to have a combinations of a clinicians and a public member in positions of representation, just to create a mix of expertise and perspective, right, in the space. So I think that also fit that criteria. And yeah, that will end my nomination. So I would like to open the floor to see if there are any comments of support or proposing other nomination. Yes.
Justin Huff, LMFT member. I want to second the nominations for Jones and Strack for chair and vice chair.
Thank you. So legal, so since we have a second, do we still open it to other nomination, or we can do that, right?
You're absolutely welcome to, and then we'll go take each motion separately.
If there are any more.
Public comment also, and then vote.
Perfect. So are there any other nominations on the floor or proposal that my fellow board members would like to make as today?
And you don't have to. It's okay.
Yeah.
No pressure.
Oh, yes, John Selleck.
So John Tonebeck, LMFT, because some of us did not have the chance to have conversations about nominations with fellow board members, I am going to be surprising someone, so with an absolute understanding if they choose not to be involved in this, that I respect that choice. I would like for vice chair to add an additional nomination of Dr. Annette Walker. This is based on although they're a new member to the board, their history of service to the state of California is exemplary, including work in education, DEI work, and I think it could be a really valuable asset to the work that this board is focusing on.
At some point, I'm going to say yes to you, John, because I appreciate you so much. I do appreciate the nomination, but I am the person that raised the question yesterday in regards to the process of nominating the board chair and chair. I'm very process-driven. I respect the process, and being that I am new and just getting a better understanding of the culture behind it, which was well explained by Max, our current chair, I humbly will not move forward until I am well informed so that I can make an informed decision. But that yes is coming. That yes is coming, but I do respect the process.
Very, very nice. So thank you, Dr. Walker. So that means I hold your thought for John Selleck. Any other comments? Okay. Looks like then we have a motion on the floor moved by me and sorry, two motions. Oh, each position, so two motions.
I'm short. Eleanor Uribe?
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker?
Yes.
Abigail Ortega?
Yes.
Justin Huft?
Yes.
Susan Friedman?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Chris Jones?
Yes.
Max Disposti?
Yes.
John Sovek?
Yes.
Ross Ehrlich?
Yes.
Kelly Ronasinghe?
Yes.
Yvette Caceres Willis?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And then we're moving to the second motion, which would be for Wendy Strack as a vice chair. So again, there's a motion on the floor moved by me, and we open for discussion. If there are any comments from the board members or the members of the audience for the motion on the floor to support vice chair Wendy Strack today. Yes, Susan Freeman?
I think Wendy would be a very, very important addition to the group that we're talking about because she is, number one, a public member, so she speaks from a different perspective. Secondly, she's been very active on committees, and her comments about various people who've come here to talk for, especially for to change their probation, have been very astute and very precise. And I think that her input will be very, very important for the board.
Thank you, Susan. I second that. Are there any other comments? Kelly Ronasinghe?
I would just like to say, during hearings, Board Member Strack has an incredibly astute and insightful knowledge of the facts as presented, and more so than any judge I've ever met.
Kelly Ronasinghe, thank you for your comments. Are there any others? And also for the members of the public, it's also open to you all if you have any comments. Okay, so motion on the floor, again, from Wendy Strack as a vice chair, and I think we can move to vote, right? Christina, thank you.
Eleanor Uribe?
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker?
Yes.
Abigail Ortega?
Yes.
Justin Huft?
Yes.
Susan Friedman?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Chris Jones?
Yes.
Max Disposti?
Yes.
John Sovek?
Yes.
Ross Ehrlich?
Yes.
Kelly Ronasinghe?
Yes.
Yvette Caceres Willis?
Yes.
Motion carries. Congratulations, officers.
Just a little note that surprised me as I was not so much making the introduction for this agenda item. We have Dr. Leah Brew that actually joined us today, which is our former board member for many years, which actually stepped down from the board, I believe, a year and a half ago, right, Dr. Brew? Longer than that. 2 years? I mean, the legacy of Dr. Brew still with us, I guess. Thank you for joining us today. It's really a pleasure to see you here. So I believe now we're moving to our executive office report. We're going to fly through, considering I don't have a break later. No, I wasn't suggesting for you. It was just moving on without any break from this to the next.
Okay, well, I budgeted 2 hours for my report. So.
No.
No, I'll try to make this a little brief. All the information is presented. Oh, sorry. You okay? Okay. All the information is presented in paper and in the packet, so you can see, but I will give you some highlights of that. The board budget is, we still have a strong budget. We have a budget of $13.5 million, and our expenditures up to date, I think this is probably, I think it's the 10th month or 11th month, is $8.6 million we've spent, and we have a reserve of 14.2 months. So that's a really healthy reserve. Personnel, we currently have 6 vacancies. We are continuing to work on those. People leave and people come in. So we do have some new employees. We have Jeff Brooks. He started as a ASW evaluator, and that's really helped out with the processing times, and he's been doing great. Actually, all the new employees have been doing fantastic. Michelle Gonzalez, She's working in the licensing unit, and she's took on the position of kind of like a support staff for the licensing unit. We've coordinated a different type of position to help out with some details. It's helping to speed up the process, so she's doing great. And then Brandy Somas actually returned. She left and she came back I think she was gone only about 3 months. So we were happy to have her back, and so she's working in the conviction reviews. And then Nelson Wong, he is a new AGPA in the enforcement evaluator. And they're all doing great. We're happy to have them. I'm sure they're not watching. They're probably busy doing their work. But thank you all for joining us. Ashley Henderson departed the board, and she was working in the registration unit. So currently, right now, we have 6 vacancies. 2 of those we've already made selections to fill, so those will be filled pretty soon. We are receiving applications for the SSM1 to take over in our enforcement unit and to relieve Marlon of some of his other duties as assigned, so he'll be happy about that. Additionally, we are looking at we actually have submitted paperwork to get 2 limited term positions for our registration unit to hopefully bolster our evaluation processing times. Unfortunately, everyone's really busy, so the positions, I wanted to fill them before the uptick in applications, but it'll be midway during the busy season, so hopefully we'll see some improvements in that. Licensing report. So currently, last quarter there was approximately 4,000 registrations and licenses in combined issued. That's a 1.5% gain from the quarter before. And right now we're up to 135,000 basically licensed and registered people that are registered with the board. Processing times have increased for the exam applications, but we had a decrease in the registration applications just because of the cycle time. It is interesting, we already are seeing an uptick in the registration applications, so our cycle times are changing a little bit, and it seems like almost kind of like we're not getting a break. So hopefully we'll be able to look at that and kind of plan and strategize for the future and make sure we're getting those done in an appropriate amount of time. The exam report, we had a total of 4,448 exams that were administered last quarter, and that's 14% of last quarter. There's a lot of discussions. We had discussions about the exam administration and the exams itself. I'm just doing a brief overview today. We're still collecting information and working with the different organizations, ASWB, AMFTRB, looking at the national exam. So in August, though, I plan to bring back a more full discussion about exams, so be prepared for that. This is just a brief overview of the different organizations. ASWB, they continue to work on looking at not necessarily exams, but reaching out to the community to see what the barriers to licensures are. They've been holding community meetings and such. Additionally, they had engaged with Fifth Theory, and this is a tool that people who actually take the ASWB national exam, if they fail, they can actually take advantage of this, and it gives you testing strategies. Not necessarily, it's not like a testing prep, but it gives you strategies to help you with the exam. So they're hoping that might kind of assist candidates in passing the exam. We have been working on, we did a kind of a system change or a process change with our National Board of Clinical Counselor exam eligibilities, and it actually has really helped out. It's changed. There was some issues with when we were sending them over with candidates really knowing when they could examine and such, and so we've kind of cleaned that up, and we've noticed that it has helped out. We have been receiving less communications and less kind of errors, so that was good. I've been working with the AMFTRB representatives, and we're going to be working on looking at the concerns that were brought up in November, actually, it seems like a long time, sorry, but we will bring information back, and that will be in August. So AMFTRB and I will be here to discuss that. And then lastly, it's really exciting. I don't know if it's going to sound too exciting to you guys, but we did put the re-exam applications online. And literally, it was funny on our Facebook. Somebody even like put a GIF, of a kid like jumping up and down and really happy. So it's big out there because we've only had the initial application for law and ethics online. So this, we have seen a huge increase of online re-exam applications. So that was kind of one of our big successes last quarter, so, in the exam unit. And then additionally, I think, I don't know if I reported on this later before, but we're doing a lot of, with the exam unit and actually with the licensing unit, we're starting to do a lot of more alerts to candidates. For the exam candidates, what we're trying to do is alert them if they're getting close to their exam eligibility expiration date, so that about 3 months before, we send them an email to say, hey, you might want to schedule your exam or you're going to abandon your application. There's another alert for after you take the clinical exam for 6 years, you have to complete it by that 7th year. So we put an alert out for that. Basically major milestones that we want to make sure that they're aware about, because that's where we get most of our calls, where people don't realize either their exam eligibility date is going to expire, or that they might be coming up on a year for licensing on their, a year from applying to, figuring out their deficiencies. So we continue to work on things like that, the alerts, so that we're doing at least our due diligence to make sure they know, because we don't like to see people lose eligibility or, bypass that, because it's a lot just to get to that clinical exam. And if you do lose eligibility, you would have to actually reapply, which means at some point people will have to have 3,000 hours gained again. So it's really important that they understand that. So we're working on more alerts on that. Enforcement report, we received 467 consumer complaints last quarter and 294 criminal convictions, and we closed 588 cases. Out of the 2,263 cases reviewed, we've closed, this is for the year, we've received 2,263 cases, and we have closed 1,699 cases. That's about 75% of them are closed. Gives you about a 25% that kind of move on to additional either accusations or stipulated or statements of issues. 39 cases were referred to the Attorney General. We had 44 accusations, 4 statements of issue, 4 statement of issues, SOIs, 3 citations, and 26 final decisions and orders in the last quarter. It is taking us about 49 days to complete a board investigation in-house, and that's pretty good. There is no discipline or probation, there's no backlog in our petitioner cases, which is good. It seems like the system is working. And moving on, education and outreach. I always keep touting our followers on Facebook. We're up to 26,000 now. We've actually, Instagram seems to be increasing quite a bit too. We have 36% more followers from the quarter before. And our reach continues, or was good last quarter, in those using those social media outlets. CIC, the DCA's department that helps us out with phone, answered 3,500 calls for us with an average wait time of 1 minute. In group email boxes, the board staff responded to around 22,000 emails, and that's just for group email boxes. That's not for personal emails or emails sent directly to staff. So that keeps us very busy. Doesn't include your emails, man. 23,000. I'm sorry, 20. No. Pathway to license. And we're working on the videos for Pathway to Licensure. Those are almost done. We're in post-production for those, and what those are, videos kind of describe some of the processes during the licensing, when you're going to get your license. There's about 7 videos, I think, I forgot, but we'll be posting those on the website once they're done. And I'll present one probably in August so you can see what they are. And we have developed telehealth best practice documents, and those have been completed, and that came out of the telehealth committee. And I believe I have those as an attachment. You can see those. We're going to utilize those materials when we go out to conferences, and they will be posted on our website also. And you might actually use social media to get those out there too. Outreach efforts. The outreach efforts, we're going through a process of really coordinating that better. Right now it's been kind of, we get requests from different schools or organizations. I might get a request, Marlon might get a request, even staff get requests. So we're centralizing all of that. Carl, in our licensing unit, he's actually assigned to that. And what we're going to do is almost like a scheduler now, so that we can really kind of make it.
I think we have an extra one over here.
Mine's working. I'm working.
Okay, we go off the record for a second. For the webcast, yeah. Thank you. With the executive officer report. We still have a quorum, it's okay, it's okay, yeah. And then as procedure, as you know, at the end of the report, we'll have questions, comments, and everything you would like to ask to our EO. Thank you, Steve. We can proceed. Yeah.
Okay, I think last I was talking about outreach, we're coordinating that a little bit better. We're actually putting up an email address, which we will later on kind of put out there for people to actually request outreach events. And then looking at our outreach events, we're doing really good. We've kind of increased our reach. And Eleanor, you were one of them, so that was cool. That was for President of State. So last quarter we did 10 outreach events. So organizational development, we made 14 updates to the Breeze system last quarter, and we have 40 more that are waiting to be done. And the Organizational Improvement Office, we went through the process of looking at all our procedures and how we process applications. It's still in the finalization phase where they are getting their upper management to put a stamp of approval on that. And then eventually I'll bring that to the board so you can see what we went through. And that's going to give us some key guiding points as to where we might want to make improvements to the processing time, or processes and procedures. And actually, I'm going to put Marlon on the spot.
Oh, wow.
I did talk about this, didn't I? I'm putting Marlon on the spot here we are doing, we're doing some more work on kind of a DEI training and such. And Marlon is part of the DCA DEI work group. And so I thought it was more kind of appropriate. He's got more information to talk about on this. So.
Well, I will attempt to try to keep this brief because I think Deputy Director Gear did a real excellent job of kind of going over the materials. So I'll just kind of go over, like, with our board staff of what we're doing. On March 28th, board staff participated in the unbiased training facilitated by DCA's SOLID program. Topics in the training included what DEI means, defining unconscious bias, recognizing the types of biases, and understanding gender identity and developing self-reflective habits. This coming Tuesday, board staff will be participating in a second training session. This is one that's titled Generational Differences. Personally, it's one of my favorite trainings that I took. It gives us the opportunity to understand generational influences, learn ways to practice generational inclusion, and just kind of go over something because, again, this was one of my favorite trainings that we took as far as the DEI training. Being able to identify like the different generations and how to communicate with different people here at DCA. We have people from different groups, from the baby boomers to the Gen Z, and just different, meeting people on their level. So there's some people who like to communicate through emails. There will be people who would like to talk to you face to face. It was a great opportunity just to kind of learn those different communication styles and how to, again, to meet people on their level. So I think it's going to be a great opportunity for board staff. And once again, we'll be doing that this Tuesday on March 9th. Again, also, we will have our next committee meeting this Friday on May 12th. So as we get like further details, I'll be glad to come up here and share more details on the things that we're working on here with the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Marla.
Just a quick follow-up, if I may.
Oh, yeah.
How is the training facilitated? Is this in person, online?
So our last training that we conducted, that one was online. Our next one, Generational Differences, it will be in person, and it will be all board staff members will be there.
All board staff, okay.
Yeah.
And it was, just as a heads up, that was a positive feedback. Staff really did appreciate the training, and DCA did a good job. So we're looking forward to this.
How did you gather that information?
Huh?
How did you gather that information? How did you get that feedback?
Oh, from just them telling me.
So there's no post surveys or evaluations? It might be nice to
They
capture
do,
that.
DCA has it. Actually, no, that's right, they did.
Yeah.
Actually, no, DCA did feedback and actually presented to me, but also staff too on just, you know, through
It'd be nice to
conversation.
monitor that, just.
Yeah.
No, it's been excellent. The feedback that we have been getting from staff has been really excellent. We've been trying to do like a good effort just to honestly keep the doors of communication open, you know, between, you know, management, executive staff, and our staff members. And so, you know, definitely want to make sure everyone is recognized, understood, and valued as employees, so.
I have a question.
Sure.
Thank
Real
you.
quick.
There is a question from Wendy Strack.
Just wanted to follow up on Dr. Walker's question from earlier. Since the board staff found that training so useful, is it something that we could explore for future for the board to bring some sessions like that to the board?
Yes, and I believe Deputy Director Gear stated that that is something that is available through LMS for the board members. And there's other trainings as well that will be available to you.
Okay, I'm sure Christina will let us know
Sure.
what those opportunities are. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Any other particular questions on the merit to Marilyn? Thank you for taking the time to share that with us as
There's
well.
two people over here.
Yes, hi to people over there. Abigail.
No, my question was similar to Wendy. It was, I was just saying if those could be possibly at times offered virtually for people who aren't able to go and might want to go because we're the whole state, so that might be a nice option.
Yeah, and that's something that we could work on. Again, Solid does the training for us, and they do have that capability. It would just be for us just to schedule something, so.
And actually, those are virtual, I believe. The LMS will have the virtual actual, and some of them they have resources too, I think, not just the training events, but they are virtual and they have additional information too on those.
Yeah, I actually just went into the LMS the other day and was able to choose which ones to
pretty
sign
cool.
up for, and they were virtual.
It's a good program.
Yeah, log in and check, just poke around.
I was just thinking it's so important for us to be able to go across the age line, the generations, because we have a lot of people retiring, a lot of new people, and so I think that's really helpful.
Yeah.
I wanted to add, are these trainings
required or are they optional?
So they are required for management, But we are strongly encouraging, all staff members to take the training. And so far, I believe we're at 100%. And those who may have not have taken the training, management has been working with them to get scheduled to take all the trainings. So.
Okay, sounds like it's pretty much required.
Just
Which-
strongly encouraged.
Strongly encouraged, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Abigail Ortega. Any other questions or comments in regards to this? And then we'll go to the comments and questions to our EO for the rest of the report. Anything else? Okay, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Marilyn. Thank you so much. Okay, we weren't done with your report, right? We still have.
I'm just, there's a lot, the strategic plan
Right.
status is up, is there, all the information is there. We've been, we keep plugging away at it. There's some things that we need to start on, but I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Okay.
And hopefully the report makes sense to you guys.
So, so the floor is open. I know I have Kelly Ranasinghe already with that question. It's just for a procedural, as you make your comments, if you can refer to any of the agenda items so we have exactly an idea which one you are referring to in your comments or questions, so, Kelly, you ready?
Steve, on item 16F, are the telehealth sheets, they're good to distribute?
Yes.
Cool, thank you.
I was like, is that it? I'm like, you made me nervous. I'm like, is there an edit you saw? No. No, yeah. Yeah, no, they're ready to distribute, and we're gonna, I think actually they're gonna be distributed at the campus having a conference. It's the first conference we're gonna be handing them out at.
Wonderful. Are the Abigail Ortega?
For that same item on 16F, I think one thing that I see a lot of therapists asking is, does the therapist have to be in California when they're providing telehealth?
Okay.
And if they're not, then how long can they be out of state or country? So I think that would be valuable because there's no clarity on that. And for item 16C, I saw that the ASW subsequent registration went down 30% this quarter compared to last quarter, and 40% for the renewal ASW activity. I'm just curious, why that's so?
It's cycle time. Yeah, because it's the cycle time right now. It's our low period this quarter, so it kind of reflects that. So those people are coming up on that, way back when. It's that 6-year cycle time. So it's not. I mean, honestly, that's not really. It's not shocking to me for that. You'll see them go up next month and next quarter. They'll be up like 20%. I'm almost sure. So.
Oh, okay.
Can I ask clarifications on the questions, or the clarification, because Abigail made a good point. I just want to understand, in regards to the previous questions, that has to do with how is there a place where licensee can go and actually see what is the term that's allowable for you to be out of the country and continue to do telehealth? Is that, am I translating that properly or not?
So people are not clear if the therapist that is providing remote services, if they physically have to be in the state while they're providing.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
The statute's actually pretty clear, Abigail, that it's where the client is. It's not where the therapist is. So the client has to be in California. The therapist can be anywhere. No, they have to be licensed. If the therapist has a California license, they can be in another state providing the service as long as the client is in California. There are some portability issues that are going, but if you want to just look at the black and white question, like if it's a BBS licensed clinician, they can be anywhere. The client has to be in California.
Okay. Well,
yeah, we can discuss that, yeah. No, I see where you're coming.
The concern was to open a whole conversation around portability license, which is not on the agenda, and it's way more complex.
No, and actually what we're planning to do with this, you know, as these questions come up, we wanted to, I think one of the goals is to a more centralized, like telehealth, a telehealth kind of spot on the website and more FAQs. So I like to hear those questions because then we can, you know, it's an FAQ
Because
that definitely
Steve.
should be addressed.
I do have a concern with the statement because I know it's true what you're saying, but it's also, anyway, we are going to go in there. Yeah,
Yeah,
no.
that's,
I
I don't know if we need to,
It's on record.
Yeah, I know.
We need to take it off record,
right.
because someone can then use that in a case if something comes up.
yeah.
I would just add,
No,
there's an FAQ on the website about telehealth that covers that as well.
We can't take it off the record because it's the past.
Well, you can strike it. I mean,
Okay, folks, but I appreciate, Abigail Ortega, I appreciate your question. That's not to put anyone in concerns, it's just that we're trying to be mindful of conversation actually has a lot of ramifications. We just, an invitation that I would like to give to the people that are listening is that really to refer to our licensing committee because this conversation is still open in regards, and there are a lot of concerns about practices that being operated out of state permanently in you know, that has been looked into it. I'm just gonna say that. So I would definitely be more mindful about a blanket statement that, you know. So we'll pick up that in the licensing committee and then bring it back to the board, but thank you for that.
And always, just please refer to our website with the FAQs and for laws and regulations. And actually, the best thing, go to our laws and regulations. So just.
Right. Any other, there were no more questions on this side. Yeah, John Savick.
John Sobek, LNFT. First of all, I want to commend you all for 16D, the notification system that you're setting up. I think it's actually a brilliant plan that will help so many of our registrants and licensees keep track of their journey through the process. So I really commend you on that. I think it's going to be incredibly valuable. I also want to recognize you for the telehealth flyers. A question about that, will they be translated into other languages?
That could be a consideration.
Cool. It might be something that could help with the notifications as well. And then finally, I want to commend you and the staff for making great strides in implementing a lot of things on the strategic plan. It's really cool to see action happening there. It really is.
Thank you.
Thank you, John Savick. We're going back and forth at this point with the audience as well, since I see Ben already standing there. Are there any other questions at the moment before Ben goes on from the board? Okay, Ben?
Good morning, Ben Caldwell, MFT. Just a couple of quick questions, and before that, Steve, if you want people to argue passionately online, ask them whether it's pronounced GIF or JIF. I don't know which one's right, but people feel very strongly about it. On 16A, on the budget stuff, I understand the sort of speculative nature of budgeting, but the projections that you have now show a pretty significant surplus in future years. I don't know whether it's still true, but I know that a few years ago, the guidance from DCA was that boards should have like a 3 to 6 month surplus. And I was curious if it was even a consideration at this point, what the board would do with all of that money if those projections come true.
Yeah, I better not say anything funny because it could, yeah, but no, I mean, we look at that as a resource, and I think for me, the big thing is looking at staffing and being able to implement and, you know, some of the projects that we've wanted to do, we have to go through the process to be able to get the budget increased and to be able to use those funds, but I think that's kind of the main focus for at least myself. I'm not necessarily speaking outright for, but looking at that, how can we utilize those resources to improve the process and, you know, improve the board's, you know, operational stuff, so.
Thank you. My other question is about 16D. I'll pull it back up here. I know we're going to have a more robust discussion of exam stuff in August, but I just wanted to call the board's attention to the quarterly change in first-time examinee pass rate for the MFT Law and Ethics exam. We're talking about very large sample sizes here and a 16-point drop in first-time examinee pass rate. And then in contrast, if you go down to the NCMHCE for counselors, smaller sample size, but a 17-point gain one quarter to the next. And I don't know the degree to which the board consults with or would like to consult with external psychometricians, statisticians, and the like, but if the knowledge threshold for passing were indeed consistent over time, you just wouldn't see changes that dramatic from one quarter to the next in first-time pass rate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I see, unless before Dr. Leah Brew would like to ask something, Steve, you want to answer anything? Or we wait for Dr. Leah Brew?
You always bring that up, and I always have to say, I'm going to go back to OPS to get a good explanation for that. But I think I'm going to look into that some more too, so I can have a better explanation for the board members on that.
Okay, Dr. Leah Brew.
I can't speak for the MFT exam, but I know the NCMHCE exam recently completely changed its structure, which is a true multiple choice structure, and it was I think the structure was obscenely hard the way they had done it before. So I don't know. I'm just curious if maybe that has something to do with it, because that was as of January 1st. So it may have had an effect on helping those scores.
Rebecca Gonzalez, National Association of Social Workers, California chapter. I just want to thank you for the continued discussion about the exams and a more thorough look at them in August, and just to say that my members are still expressing concerns about the ASWB exam, and many would like to see it go away.
That's good to know. Any other? Thank you, Rebecca Gonzalez. Can I just make a little comment about the budget that Ben brought up? I just also looking at the trends, because for those people that are listening, it feels like there's this amount of money that needs to be spent and we don't know how. There's been a long time during COVID where hiring was a very slow process or impossible process. So what that did, we still have vacancy. So obviously the budget shows a healthy dynamic. But when everyone is employed, we have to take into consideration the trends from 5 years from now, because the budget is projected that far out. So at the moment you might have that saving, but in reality that's not what it's projected, even though we're in a very healthy space. So I just wanted to, just for the record, I know Ben, you know that, I want to make sure people don't think that, especially after increasing the license fees, that people might think that now we have more money than expected, when before we were actually looking at a projection that was actually very compromising, right, in terms of sustainability. So I just wanted to share that, because I don't want to, I hope that Steve is okay with that.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
And just to add on quickly, just for everyone's knowledge, is we have a budget that is approved, and the reserves, we actually have to go through the process to ask, to increase the budget. So we can't, I know there's always that perception is like, well, why can't you just hire more people? Well, we have to go through a process, and we are working, in the background to try to do that, so.
Exactly, thank you. Any other questions of any items that our EO has brought forward? It could be comments, questions, clarifications in regards to any of the agenda item. We're good? So it's not quite 2 hours, Mr. EO?
I can keep talking. I can keep talking.
No, we're good, it's fine. Okay then, so at this point that will conclude the Executive Officer report. We can still move on with the agenda, and I believe our next introduction will come from our Roseanne. Roseanne will introduce item 17 in the agenda, which is discussion and possible action regarding amendment to the board's temporary practice allowance bill proposal, and you'll see all the numbers below. Thank you, Roseanne. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning.
So AB 232 is the bill that is currently running through the legislature that the board is actually is sponsoring. The author is Assemblymember Aguiar Curry, and the bill has been moving forward nicely. It has cleared both of its committees in the Senate, in the Assembly, and it has moved on to the Senate now. It's passed out of the Assembly, so it continues on its way. So basically a little bit of an overview of what the bill does. It allows a 30-day temporary practice allowance to qualifying therapists who are licensed in another state, whose client is visiting California or is in the process of moving here, if they meet certain conditions. They have to have a current active and unrestricted license in that state that's equivalent to one of the board's professions. They can only see the client for 30 consecutive days in a calendar year. The client needs to be located in California and have been the person's client immediately before they've traveled to California. The therapist has to inform the client of certain information about their license and also inform this board about certain information about their license, and then they'll get a 30-day allowance to practice with their particular client. So in drafting this bill, we had the legislative council is the legislature's legal counsel, and they look at all bills, and they make sure that basically all the legal I's and all the are dotted and the T's are crossed and all of those things. So they requested that we bring a section into the bill that it's in MFT law, it's section 4980. And that particular section basically sort of lays the basis for if you're going to practice marriage and family therapy in California, you need to be licensed. And so they asked for some, that section is very old. It was drafted many, many years ago, probably decades. It hasn't changed in a long time. It's kind of out of date legally. And so they requested to do some non-technical, or some technical non-substantive changes to the section, just as cleanup as part of the bill. And so we worked with the Legislative Council, and he came up with a proposal, and the board took a look at those changes at its February 3rd meeting and approved those. And so CAMPS took a second look at a clarification in that particular section. It was in 4980D2. And they just wanted to add a little bit of a technical language in that subparagraph to reiterate that people without a California license that are as another type of licensee can't use the LMFT letters as to represent that they you know, if you're a licensed psychologist or a clinical social worker, you're going to be practicing psychotherapy, but you can't use the LMFT letters. So it's just a really, just to make sure 100% that it's explicitly clear, they requested that we consider the amendment that you see today. And so that's going to be shown in attachment A, and it's the italic language that you see in section 4980 of that. And so it's basically in 4980 C2, there's a little bit of a language change, very minor, and then most of the change you'll see in D2, where it's just adding that extra clarification. And so at this point, that's the proposed change. We need the board's approval so that we can amend it into the bill if that's what they desire. So I'll open it up for discussion.
Thank you, Roseanne. Are there any questions or clarification from the board of or comments or a motion to move forward?
I'll make a motion to direct staff to make the discussed changes and any non-substantive changes to the language and amend it into AB 232.
Thank you,
Did I
Wendy.
do that right, Roseanne?
Totally. Thank you, Wendy Strack. We have a motion on the floor. The comments are still open, if there are any, or we can look for a second. Anyone would like to second the motion that Wendy's did?
John Sovek, second.
John Suffolk, second. Any other comments on the motion on the floor? Any comments from the audience? Yes. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Kristen Roska from CAMPT. Before I get into my quick comment, Kathy Atkins sends her apologies for not being here today. As Steve alluded to, our annual conference kicked off today, so she is, I know she wishes she was here. But as Roseanne kind of detailed, we just view this bill as a very non-substantive change. It just incorporates language that previously was in the original draft, and we do appreciate your support.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other comments Otherwise, I will go for a vote, since we have a motion and a second. Christina?
Eleanor Uribe,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Yes.
Abigail Ortega,
Yes.
Justin Huft,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Chris Jones,
Yes.
Max Disposti,
Yes.
Joan Sovek,
Yes.
Ross Ehrlich,
Yes.
Kelly Ranasinghe,
Yes.
Yvette Caceres Willis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Christina. Roseanne, I think we are moving on to item 18 on the agenda, Telehealth Committee update.
Yes, so the Telehealth Committee held its most recent meeting on March 16th of this past month, or past 2 months ago. The purpose of that committee is to determine if any of the board's statutes and regulations regarding telehealth need to be updated. So this committee has been in place for a couple of years, just over a couple of years now, and it's done a lot of work. During the last meeting, the committee members and stakeholders reviewed and discussed several things. We discussed a draft survey that staff had compiled to gather information about licensees and registrants' experiences working for online-only therapy platforms. And so the status, that survey is currently open and live. It's been distributed via our email listserv and also our social media. The associations have been very helpful in helping us distribute that survey as well. And we've had a really great response. I think that there's about 1,200 people that have participated in the survey so far. So I'll be closing that probably around the 15th of the month so that we can compile the data, hopefully in time for the next telehealth committee, which is going to be on June 8th, and kind of look at some of the results. Another thing that the committee discussed was revisions to the board's statutes and regulations that require physical display of a license or a registration to account for telehealth practice. The physical display requirements, now that a lot of therapists are meeting with clients online, having a requirement that your physical license is displayed on a wall in the background might not necessarily be visible. So we need to have that updated, possibly. So the committee has approved draft language to update that, and it will next be reviewed by the Policy and Advocacy Committee. And then finally, at that committee meeting, we looked at the creation of a telehealth best practices document. So staff has created actually 3 best practices documents, one for providers of therapy via telehealth, one for providers of telesupervision, and one for consumers receiving telehealth therapy. So we're proceeding with those documents now. So that's kind of a summary of the telehealth committee. At the next committee meeting, we'll be continuing on to discuss the survey results, and then also we're going to be starting the discussion on interstate compacts. So, any questions on that?
Thank you, Roseanne. Yes, I echoed that question or the questions. Any questions? Any comments? There is not a vote on this, it's just an information for your, Kelly Ranasinghe?
I'm going to save most of my comments for new agenda items, but I'm really happy with the Telehealth Committee's work in this matter, including the telehealth best practice documents. Kudos to Steve for drafting all of those. They're outstanding.
Thank you, Kelly. I second that. Any other comments? Okay, since we don't have a vote on this, we're moving on to the Licensing Committee updates, which is item 19 in our agenda.
Yeah, so the Licensing Committee held its last meeting on January 13th. And the Licensing Committee's purpose is to conduct an in-depth discussion about several topics that are pertinent to the licensing process. There's a lot of information for this committee to cover, and so it's been a really great standing committee. Most recently, its motions contributed to AB 1759, which was signed into law last year. And so at the January meeting, the committee discussed the creation of a workforce development action plan, discussed the practices of pastoral counseling and life coaching, and discussed the creation of a consumer outreach document to explain the board's regulated professions to the public. So we're continuing to work on those items, and we're going to hold another meeting of the Licensing Committee on July 21st.
Thank you. I see Dr. Brew coming forward.
Hi, Leah Brew, LPCC. At one point, there was a conversation that I thought was in the licensing committee, and I don't know if it died or moved on. I think I missed something about the 6-year limit on holding your associates and like not being able to renew and extending that time. I know when I left in 2020, that was like the beginning of the conversation. So Is that still on the table, or just what happened to that?
We had had that discussion, and I believe it was in Policy and Advocacy Committee, and then it also went to board. And so there was a proposal on the table for the 6-year rule to allow a private practice for the second number, but that proposal was not approved, so it did not move forward. So right now, we haven't had any further discussion about the 6-year rule.
Thank you.
So if I'm correct, because we were in PNA as well, it became a conversation for months, and then it became a
Yeah.
bill, but then,
It
it didn't become
It
a
didn't
bill.
become
It
a bill.
was, it didn't make the bill. That's
I
what
don't
meant.
remember if it started in licensing or if it came out of PNA, but we did
It
have
was PNA.
have the discussion, and then it did go to board, but yeah.
It didn't move forward. Yeah, it was PNA, because I was there. Thank you, Roseanne. Any other comments about the licensing committee updates from Roseanne? Dr. Walker.
Hi, I am a member of the licensing committee, Annette Walker, public member. Just a little housekeeping, I don't know how I noticed this, it may not even be relevant or important, but on the public agenda, our agenda as well, it noted the time is 9 p.m. We did not meet at 9 p.m. in January.
I hope not.
We work pretty, but I don't know if we just.
Are you talking about the agenda for that meeting?
Yes.
Okay, we'll
we-
take a look at that.
Yeah, we want to clean that up. And along those lines, I just want to be mindful that when we're preparing the memo for this, that the notes do align with the meeting minutes and what was actually discussed. So I saw that you put that briefly in there, but it was a very informed committee, good speakers, good discussion, and I just want to hopefully capture that.
Okay.
Okay, just a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walker, for the feedback and the editing as well. Are there any other comments from our board or members of the audience? Okay, I think we can close the licensing committee update, and we're moving now to item 20, which is the discussion and possible action regarding AB 665, members Carrillo, in regards to minors, consent to mental health services. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Max. So AB 665 is seeking to make the requirements for minor consent to mental health treatment equal for both Medi-Cal recipients and non-Medi-Cal recipients. And the sections in law that address this have kind of a long, complicated history. So there's actually 2 sections in law in different codes, one's in family code, one's in health and safety code, that address a minor consent to mental health services. And the language is very similar in both, but it's not exactly the same. And it's kind of weird that there's 2 sections that are sort of for 2 different reasons. So the history on that. So basically, first, let me kind of go over the gist of the sections and what they say and the differences, and then I'll talk about why they're in 2 different sections. So the Health and Safety Code is the code that applies to most individuals, minors consenting to mental health treatment. And it permits a minor 12 or older to consent if, in the opinion of the attending professional person, the minor is mature enough to participate in the treatment intelligently. It requires the treatment of the minor to include the involvement of the parent or guardian unless the professional person treating the minor, after consulting with the minor, determines that the involvement would be inappropriate. And it must be stated whether in the client record whether and when the person treating the minor attempted to contact the parent or guardian, or why in the person's professional opinion it would be inappropriate to do so. And then it defines a professional person as several types of mental health professionals. So basically it loops all of our license types in to this consent requirement. So it includes LMFTs, LEPs, LCSWs, LPCCs, and also all of our associates, social work interns, and then marriage and family therapy and professional clinical counselor trainees. So it captures everybody who might be licensed by this board or working toward a license. But then there's a clause in this health and safety code section that says that these consent requirements do not apply to people who are covered as beneficiaries under the Medi-Cal program. So anybody that's using Medi-Cal for therapy services, this consent requirement does not apply. They have a different consent requirement, and that's in Family Code section 6924. And then the family code section is written a little bit different, and it's a little bit more difficult to get consent. It permits a minor age 12 and older to consent, but two conditions have to be met. The minor, in the opinion of the professional person, has to be mature enough to participate intelligently in the services, and the minor either has to be the alleged victim of incest or child abuse, or the minor would present a danger of serious physical or mental harm to self or others without the mental health treatment or shelter services. So it sets a much higher bar there for consent. And then also, it defines a professional person a little bit differently. It lists several types of mental health professionals, including our license types, although it lists social workers indirectly by referencing another code. It does not include social workers, social work interns, MFT trainees, and PCC trainees. And so it's a little bit odd that the language, it seems a little bit out of date. But that's the way that kind of things ended last time the legislature negotiated this. So a little bit of background on why this is. And I had to talk to a lawyer from the sponsor to kind of get the background, because it's a little complicated. So the background is that back in about 2012 and 2013, that these two, HSC 124260, which is the Health and Safety Code consent, was added via legislation. But part of the process is it was kind of done during the economic downturn, so that they think that that's why they carved out the Medi-Cal to kind of limit the expense of all the minors consenting and potentially having a huge more workload coming in with the Medi-Cal population. So it might have been to limit the fiscal impacts of the bill so it could get through. That's kind of the speculation. Another reason is it's Family Code 6924, which is the older of the two provisions, the one that applies to Medi-Cal, is housed in a chapter of the Family Code that addresses the ability of minors of varying ages to seek various other types of medical services without parental consent, one of them being abortion, things like that. So it was thought that there might have been a concern about the time of touching that particular code section might lead to other code sections being touched and the implications of that, and just kind of not wanting to go forward with it. So that was kind of at the time, the thinking, that's sort of the backstory. But the author's office notes that it leads to an unequitable consent requirements it's much harder for Medi-Cal youth to be able to consent on their own to mental health services. Even if they meet the requirements of the Health and Safety Code, they have to meet the Family Code requirement instead. So that's basically the background of that. I think that the bill is just trying to make the two code sections more similar and equitable. And so it's moving forward. It's already in the Senate. There is an incorrect reference to LEP statute that I would like to ask the author's office to fix. It just references an old code section. It also, I have suggested to the sponsor that, hey, you don't have all of our license types listed in Family Code 6924. It might be a good idea to clean that up. I think that's important, but I don't know that we would want to make a position hinge on that if for some reason they can't do it, because I don't think that we would want to, potentially interrupt what they're trying to do with the bill because of that. But I will open it up to discussion now.
Wow, so much to unpack on this. Yes, Kelly Ranasinger.
Okay, so. There are 60,000 foster youth in California, and virtually all of them are treated by mental health clinicians or therapists. And notwithstanding the fact that Nickel and California Children's Trust and the California Coalition for Youth sponsored this bill, I think this could be very difficult for therapists and children and the dependency system as a whole, and here's why. This bill removes the requirement that the parent or guardian must be included in the mental health treatment of the minor unless, in the opinion of the professional person treating the minor, involvement would be inappropriate, right? Okay, so you are a child in reunification. You're moving down the reunification pathway. The court then says, as a court order, to the mental health service provider, you are to provide conjoint counseling to participate in reunification. What does the therapist do then? So I believe there should be a section in here that directly addresses the foster youth that are seeking mental health treatment, because that is a sizable population, to delineate how a therapist is going to address the interplay between mental health treatment in the context of the foster youth and juvenile system versus mental health treatment with someone else. Otherwise, I think the therapists are going to be very confused about what they have and have to do. There are thousands of therapists treating children in the foster care system right now. How does this bill and the consent interplay and intersect with the minor's consent, pre-reunification and post-reunification and post-permanency? I can see a situation where a court says, well, we'd like to conduct visitation and we'd like it to happen in a therapeutic setting. The therapist then says, well, no, I don't feel that's appropriate. Well, then you have a direct conflict between this bill and a court order. How does that play out with the case law and how the Legislative Council will see it? So I think this bill needs a little bit more work, particularly with someone who has knowledge of how the juvenile statutes address mental health consent between parents and children, and how this will affect a therapist's ability to push parents away from that decision-making power. And I mean, that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Kelly, for that. I mean, definitely. I see Susan raising her hands. I want to be sure that, okay, go ahead.
Kelly, your county, this is just,
No, it works.
anyway, your county may be very good about supplying mental health to foster children. Los Angeles County, it's desperate, desperate. They don't get mental health. We are constantly trying to figure out how to get mental health to foster children. So I'm wondering if there should be some kind of separate bill about foster children, because there is no parent who's going to be whatever.
Susan, I apologize to interrupt you, but just for the order of the thing, we cannot make proposal we need to stay on the topic of this bill and maybe make an amendment suggestion like Kelly did. So
Okay, so
Thank you.
my suggestion would be an amendment dealing specifically with foster children.
Thank you, Susan. John Savick.
Roseanne, finish your note.
Go ahead.
I do have a question just addressing these two concerns from my fellow board members. This bill is actually just cleaning up language of existing policy that's already in place. It is not putting in new decisions on how minor consent is done.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Thank for that questions, John Savick. I just want to add something. When I read the bill the first time, I was having a hard time too, because I had just a background fear because there's been a lot of attempt nationwide, and I know California is not on that train, to limit the access of mental health services from a minor standpoint of view. So I speak for my own agency. We don't use Medi-Cal, Medicare. It's a free therapy. So we get consent from the minor 12 years up. It's from them, and no other limitations are posted. A lot of nonprofits do that because our minors are in a crisis. The therapist will have the power to define the level of crisis, not the administrators when they checked in, they're individual. So I was a little bit uneasy. I understand the purpose of the bill. I was just a little bit, I hope this doesn't create more challenges, even though we're trying to create equity between the two bills. I just want to make sure that it doesn't reopen a wound that was already opened many years ago in California in regards to if it causes more actually accessibility in terms of providing that equity, then obviously it's something that I personally speak for that. I'm looking forward to it, but I was a little bit concerned about not even addressing that in the bill.
So the bill opens up, so basically right now 6924 basically has a higher, the minor has to be in crisis basically in order to consent. So it would remove that particular barrier so that barrier, that requirement wasn't there anymore. So it's more like the health and safety code
But one defines what a crisis is, the others doesn't.
Okay.
So I don't get to have to explore the crisis, from an agency standpoint of view. The crisis could be anything, could be suicide idealizations, could be abuse or sexual assault, or could be, for a minor experience, a crisis could be life-threatening, and maybe that crisis for an adult, it's not so threatening. So I'm saying the definition of a crisis was a little bit what was concerning me, because it could limit the window of accessibility. So I wonder, this bill intention was to do that, and so to make the bar a little bit higher for qualifications instead of leaving it where it's at, which is a very open to interpretation right now. The terminology of crisis is very open for the state of California. So that was my question. I just don't want to restrict access for minor consent.
Not seeing in the bill where that particular section is defining a crisis. But let me look.
Let me get to it.
And
John Savak, in the meantime.
if I may add a thought too, what I'm reading in your notes is that what we're trying to do is in one bill, there is the requirement for crisis and the other isn't. They're trying to remove the crisis
Yes.
definition, so the access actually expands.
Okay,
That's correct.
perfect.
Yes,
And that's
it's
what was
being
confusing.
struck.
Thank you, John.
It's
So
being
we're-
struck in the part of the bill that's being amended, which is the Medi-Cal one, which has the higher threshold. It's removing the crisis requirement. So it's not, I don't think there's a definition really of it would take that language out.
Okay, that's exactly answering my question. I appreciate that, John. That was my concern. Yes, and yeah, go ahead.
Justin Huff,
Justin.
LMFT member. Thank you for your comments about the foster youth. I had not considered that, but I think my understanding of this is not only is it lowering this threshold for crisis, and I do think that there is specific reference to 5150 criteria, which is how they're defining crisis. I think it's very clear, as the chair pointed out, that this is increasing equity and accessibility to therapy for minors. But I also think that it's worth noting that my understanding is the primary opponents of this are individuals who are concerned that queer and trans children would be able to receive some sort of affirming therapy. And I think that that's concerning, that I think that that's telling why we would want to be limiting access to therapy for minors.
I'm confused on the last.
So I think it's telling that the opponents of this are all coming from the same place of we don't want children to be able to receive gender-affirming
Right, we know
therapy.
that, yeah. And that's why my concern was, the fact that I look at the bill, but I cannot just limit my information based on who opposed to it, even though it says a lot in general. So I was just concerned about that in trying to do good, we're though creating a threshold or limitations that I didn't. But I think John Savak in addressing that, it really answered my question, so I don't want to create more confusion. This Abigail first and then back to Kelly. Thank you.
This bill came up at the Latina conference that I attended, and a lot of the high schoolers that were there were, really for it because their parents had stopped them from receiving therapy because of the stigma, right? There's a huge stigma around it for especially, minority populations. Personally, therapy was never discussed in my family and still isn't. And what I like about this bill is that it gives the minor the power back in what happens. So instead of, it removes the requirement that the parent or guardian must be included in the mental health treatment of a minor unless in the opinion of the professional person treating the minor, involvement would be inappropriate. And what gets added is that it says unless the professional person treating the minor after consulting with the minor determines that involvement would be inappropriate. So I like that they added after consulting with the minor because no one consults with the minor. And another thing So you consult with the minor, says that they don't want their parent involved, but does the parent still have to give written consent? Is there documents that they still have to sign, or can the teen, right, or the person 12 years or older sign off, and then that's, they're good to go?
According to the way I read the bill, if there's no parent sign off, they have to document in the records that they believe the minor is able to participate intelligently, and why.
Yes, okay. So yes, I think that would greatly expand. I see it in the private sector when I worked with foster care kids, they're there's a lot of control over who they can talk to, and are they going to get in trouble, or will they be disappointing their parents, right, if they declare that something is, off with their mental health. So it gives them back that power.
I just want to make before I go, I thank you for that, Abigail. I just, so that we don't confuse the recipient. Like, California law is very clear. A 12 years old individual can seek therapy and without any formal consent of their parents. And then, of course, it has to be meeting the crisis dynamics and so forth, but that's between them and their clinician. So I want to make sure that this bill is not obviously even reopening that wound. It's just that creating that language that makes them all in the same place. But I want to make sure that, and then it's true what you're saying, a lot of providers, because I do a lot of educational training in Southern California, are still, even though this is an old law in California, they're still unaware how to protect minors. They still think they need to go back to their parents to do approval, especially when it comes to gender-related therapy, which is not the case. We do that a lot in my agency. And there is a lot of ignorance. A lot of minors are still thrown under the bus, for lack of a better word, because agencies are not doing their due diligence to follow the law. And for fear of liabilities from their parents suing them, they usually tend not to take cases when parents don't give the consent for therapy. So it's very problematic. So I'm sure what you were sharing is reflecting situations where, even though we have the law, the minors are not aware of it, and they're still paying the price of not having access to mental health services because they're afraid that insurance company might report it to them, to their parents, or medical and so forth. So I just want to just say that based on what you were introducing as well. So I appreciate that. And then, okay.
Kelly was first.
Oh, Kelly was first? Okay, Kelly Ransinge?
So I just want to make clear, I absolutely agree with everything that the chair says, that Mr. Huff says, that Ms. Ortega says. I'm 100% in favor of expanding access for mental health to children, absolutely. And it is very telling that the opponents to this bill are all opponents to people receiving gender-affirming care, which is guaranteed under 16001.9. But do we realize now that the consent statutes are spread out over 3 chapters? There's consent in the Health and Safety Code, consent in the Family Code, consent in the Welfare and Institutions Code, and consent here. So if a therapist is navigating these issues, they have to look over 4 different areas to try and determine and navigate how to determine the consent. And layered on top of that is the child welfare dependency statutes, which they have to navigate as well, while a therapist is providing services to a child who's a victim of abuse or neglect. So it's super confusing. We should expand access to mental health for children, but we should do it in a way that, a therapist is able to say, you know what, this is what I'm supposed to do. And I should not be at fear of having to look in 4 different books to try and get there. My position is, I think if we want to support this bill, that's fine. That's okay. But at some point, the legislature is going to have to come to grips with the fact that we cannot spread the definition of consent out over like 4 different areas.
Noted. Any other comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that these are excellent points. Thank you. My reading of this is that this is simplifying in some ways what was already existing.
Yeah.
So I also don't want us to frame this as some huge revolutionary change to what's already happening. This is already consistent with attempts to empower minors to have some sort of agency in their mental health.
Thank you, Justin. That was Justin Hupp, just for the record. Roseanne, there was a recommendation also coming from the staff on this, or?
I don't have a recommendation, well, I can talk about the names, but
Right.
I wanted to say that when I asked why there was two separate code sections and that why not combine them,
Right.
which I think is the kind of the obvious reaction to this, it was made clear that that is not an option right now, so
Right.
that's kind of
We
like,
don't get to
kind of
decide
here
that.
we are, yeah.
Right, okay.
That was my initial reaction too.
Thank you. So I don't want to close the conversation, but in situations like that, usually, we can make our recommendations and also delegate to staff all the other, I'm confident our staff will reflect these conversations also to the sponsors of this bill, and so, go ahead.
Yeah, you can take a position and provide a message as well if you would like.
Yeah. And I would like to, I don't know if it's a motion or submit that direction to, we can, I can make a motion that open to the public. And then make a motion that supports the recommendations, but also delegating staff to the, to reflect the conversation we had today and the concerns about the challenges on navigating through different codes for clinicians and trying to make sure that they are, following the law based on which insurance apply in the case or which populations we're serving. I know I'm not as good as Kelly.
I would second that motion. That's good
thank
with
you.
me.
That's an honor. And then I know we still have some comments.
I was just wondering if what Kelly was mentioning would be addressed, because it's not really addressing the kids in foster care system.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry, I missed that.
So in reading this, it does not address kids in the foster system. It addresses the parents, and, so it doesn't, I was just wondering if his comment would be something that would be included or maybe added, or I'm not sure how that could work.
Delegating perhaps to Roseanne to make sure that that was a strong concern coming from the board in regards to the absence of foster care children into the conversation. Right?
Sounds good. Also, I would note to see if you wanted to also ask them to correct the LEP statute incorrect reference and suggest including all of the board's license types, associate types,
Totally.
and in-school pre-licensees.
That will be perfect. Yeah, no one can disagree with that, I'm sure.
I would say that as far as the different license, I do see that it has the associates. So I feel like there's some issues that I feel like it would be important that maybe if it's going to be decided that it would be someone who's licensed, not to say that associates can't, but they're still learning still.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just a concern, especially if it's going to be something that's, very serious, or maybe it's opposing parents, so.
Okay, that was Eleanor Uribe, just for the record.
It would be aligning it with the other code, which includes all of them. So that it would, so basically right now, one code allows all of our license types and registrants to do it, but then the Medi-Cal one only kind of picks and chooses certain ones, and it's sort of random. So that would be, we would just suggest, hey, can you include all of them, I think is the thought.
Right. Okay, we still have a motion. Thank you, Roseanne. A motion on the floor. Any other comments about the motions? Otherwise, we go for a vote. Oh, the public. Yes, please. I apologize. Come forward.
Hi, my name is John DeLine. I'm an MFT student, and I just wanted to express that I think this is really important, especially to help youth get care, especially if they're using Medi-Cal, with what you talked about with the things that are happening to trans youth right now. I think it's very, very important. I just wrote a paper about how there are currently 4 acts of genocide being enacted towards trans people in this country, according to the UN Convention on the Prevention and Crime of Genocide. So I just wanted to express my thanks for that and helping make things more equitable for youth getting the care they need. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for taking your time to come here today. We really appreciate that. Yes.
Hello, Rebecca Gonzalez, National Association of Social Workers, California chapter. We are in support of this bill. I also want to point out, I wish I could describe the ins and outs of the child welfare system intelligently, but the County Welfare Directors Association are also in support of this bill, and they are the people that run the child welfare system, and they feel comfortable with the direction that this bill is going.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Good morning, Kristen Roscoe from the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. We are also supporting this very important bill. Right now for our members, they are faced with this horrific situation of dealing with, addressing someone's income level at the outset of treatment and just the inequities associated with that patient population. If a member calls in, the first question is asked, how are they paying for services? And if it is through Medi-Cal, those children have a very different pathway to care. So we very much support this bill.
Thank you. Thanks for coming forward. Anyone else from the audience? Back to the board. Okay, we are voting on the motion on the floor. Christina, if you're okay to call.
Yeah,
you.
I'll too.
Oh, okay, she just came in. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Are we okay?
Are we ready?
We're ready to vote? Okay. No, I thought it was a question or something. Okay. Go ahead, Steve.
We're taking a vote. Eleanor Uribe? Oh, no.
You can use mine if you like. Go ahead. Here you go.
Border. Sharing and caring.
Yeah, this one's work. I'm going to abstain at this point, sorry.
Okay. Dr. Annette Walker?
Yes.
And Abigail?
Yes.
Justin? I'm sorry, I'm going to be informal here. Justin?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Max?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
You got Kelly?
Yes.
And Yvette?
Yes.
Okay, before we move forward, motion approved. Before we move forward, we're just taking a 10 minutes break because I know you're all checking out. So I want to make sure you're not late. So it's 10:30. We'll resume at 10:40. Thank you so much. Everyone is present. We have a quorum. Steve is back. Wonderful. As a quick reminder, there were 3 items that they were deleted from our agenda, which is number 21, 22, and 23. So we're moving again with Roxanne, agenda item 24, which is the discussion and possible action regarding AB 1451, on Jackson behavioral health crisis treatment.
Yes.
Thank you,
So this
Roseanne.
bill would require a health care service plan contract or health insurance policy issued, amended, or renewed after January of 2024 that provides coverage for medically necessary treatment of mental health and substance use disorders to also cover treatment for urgent and emergent mental health and substance use disorders. So current law right now, as I kind of just mentioned, it requires every health plan that covers medical or surgical coverage to also cover medically necessary treatment of mental health and substance use disorders under the same terms and conditions applied to other medical conditions. It provides a definition of mental health and substance use disorders and also defines medical necessity. So this bill would require also the coverage of treatment for urgent and emergent mental health and substance use disorders. And states that their treatment shall not require pre-authorization. It also requires the health care service planner or insurer to provide reimbursement for the services in a timely manner. The author didn't provide too much of a statement for this bill, other than to say that they wanted to catch up the mental health. They state that mental health being designated as a crisis is designated as a crisis in our state, and the billing system needs to catch up to address ongoing behavioral health crises. So that was pretty much the statement provided on this version of the bill. It was amended recently to be a little bit different. And so that's what we have for today on this one.
Thank you, Roseanne. I do remember this one too. Any comments or questions or clarifications from the board?
One clarification I want to make, and we're looking today at the version that was amended on May 1st. It was very recently amended, so make sure that we're discussing the May 1st version. When you're
Perfect,
looking
thanks
at your
for noting
document.
that. Thank you. So any comments or questions from our audience that's present today? Any comments in regards to this bill or sharing? Thank you.
Just sharing our position. Rebecca Gonzalez, NASW California, we're in support of this bill.
Thank you. Okay. So as the board has intention to support the bill, we'll have to make a motion. Anyone moving the motion in support of this bill? Susan making a motion and Dr. Walker seconding. Am I correct? Sure. Susan, do you want to read the motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we support the urgent and emergent mental health treatment.
Is your mic on?
No, I believe your mic is off, Susan, just for the record. Sorry.
Well, I made that motion that we support this bill.
Support AB 1451?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then there is a second from Dr. Walker. Any more comments around the motion on the floor? Observations, clarifications from member of the audience as well? Any other comments? Okay, we can go to vote. Christina, is Christina here?
I'm here.
Hi.
Okay, so Eleanor Uribe is absent for this vote. Dr. Annette Walker?
Yes.
Abigail Ortega?
Yes.
Justin Huff?
Yes.
Susan Friedman?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Chris Jones?
Yes.
Max Disposti?
Yes.
John Sovek?
Yes.
Ross Ehrlich?
Yes.
Kelly Ronasinghe?
Yes.
Yvette Caceres Willis?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful, thank you so much. We're moving now to agenda item 25, and which is the discussion and possible action regarding SB 11, Menjivar, California State University and mental health counseling. Roseanne? again?
Thanks, Max. And I also want to just reiterate, SB 11 was amended very recently also. So please make sure that you're looking at the May 1st, 2023 version of the analysis. That's the one we'll be discussing today. So this bill would require the California State University system to have a minimum of one full-time mental health counselor per 1,500 students at each of its campuses. And then it also requires the CSU system to create a pipeline to incentivize interested students to become mental health counselors in the state. So the bill provides a definition of a mental health counselor as a person who provides individual or group counseling, crisis intervention, emergency services, referrals, or outreach and consultation interventions to the campus community, and who is licensed in the state of California. It requires each campus to have one full-time mental health counselor per 1,500 students, and where possible, the counselor should be full-time and should reflect the diversity of the student body. And it requires the CSU trustees to report some information, some data to the legislature every 3 years about the state of the mental health counseling and counselors employed on the campus. It wants them to conduct campus surveys and focus groups every 3 years, paying in compliance with state and federal privacy law, of course, to include groups of students of color and LGBTQ plus students, so that they understand student needs and challenges about mental health and emotional well-being and sense of belonging on campus and academic success. So that's part of the data required to be reported to the legislature. They also want them to collect data on attempted suicides without any personally identifying information. And so that's kind of the first part of this bill. The second part of this bill, and one of the reasons why I chose to analyze this is it really aligns with something that the board's been talking about a lot is to have a goal of kind of increasing the mental health professionals in the pipeline. So it has a goal of providing CSU students with incentives to become mental health counselors in California. It provides that basically the CSU would need to have a pipeline that would provide appropriated funds to provide paid internships for CSU students who need to complete supervised professional experience to become licensed by the Board of Psychology or the Board of Behavioral Sciences. And it also provides that these funds can also be used to support recruitment efforts for students to enroll in graduate degree programs that would lead to licensure with either board. And it provides that the incentives listed in these items that we just discussed would only become operational upon appropriation of one-time funds by the legislature. So the legislature would have to be able to appropriate funds in order to do this. So the author is looking to improve the counselor to student ratio on CSU campuses and to seek to increase the number of mental health professionals in the pipeline. The board might wish to discuss whether the bill's definition of a mental health counselor is adequate, or if it would be clearer to specify which licensing boards are considered applicable licensing entities in that language. I don't think that's a make or break, but it might be a nice to have. It also permits funds to be used to provide the paid internships. And I will note that while that will be very helpful for trainees, there are a certain number of hours that individuals need to acquire as trainees in their program. There also is a significant number of hours outside of their program once they graduate that they need. So this bill doesn't address that, although funds are limited, so that might be too much of a stretch to address that as well. But this is a start with just the in-school experience hours and providing some payment there. So those are kind of my comments on the bill, and I'll open it up for discussion. Oh, I will state that the California State University is opposing the therapist ratio of 1 to 1,500. They feel that in their oppose unless amended letter, the reasoning for that they gave was that it undermines the CSU authority to set campus policy. It didn't include funding for more staffing that they would need, and it relies on what they say is an outdated service model that's no longer supported by the National Counseling Organization that previously recommended it. So that particular piece of the bill they are opposed to, but they are not opposed to the other piece about the mental health pipeline.
Thank you, Roseanne, for that clarification. Wow. We have a full, I think I go this way, Dr. Walker first, and then Abigail, and then Susan, and Justin. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Roseanne. Very timely clarification. I appreciate this bill coming forth, not to mention May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So the timeliness of what we're discussing today is just really nice, okay? So to your point, I'm looking at the opposition here. So is that reference coming from the Chancellor's Office of the Cal State University? Or is the CF? It's just the CSU in general. It's not listed under the Office of the Chancellor with the letter. Okay. Well, there is opposition coming from the Cal State University Office of the Chancellor. Do you know? Can you speak to any of the opposition? I cannot speak to any of the opposition beyond they provided some information in the analysis about why CSU under their general name was opposed. I'm speaking to the others. Black Small Businesses Association of California, CA African American Chamber of Commerce, Cal State Student Association, the CSU Office of the Chancellor, and the California State University. It's very, very relevant agencies, and I'm surprised that they're opposing this bill, or and some just pieces of it. So you don't have any background information on that? Okay.
It might be from the previous version of the bill. Previous version. Okay.
That's what I was going to ask. So, is that going back to Governor Brown's opposition? No, in the previous version, they wanted to require, and so this was the version right before this one. It was done a few weeks ago. They wanted to require all of the mental health counselors, instead of being contracted out, they wanted them to be employed by the actual CSU University. Yeah, I get it. Okay, that's just helping me to get some clarity in my mind of.
No, thank you.
Where this, okay.
Thank you. And also for the, the bills also show the oppositions and the journey of the bill. So whoever was in position, but that doesn't publish, now those people are no longer opposition because the bill's still standing.
They don't,
and so
it's a
that's-
rolling opposition
Yeah,
list. It doesn't necessarily update.
Yeah.
It goes through like an analysis. If they don't send another letter, it can just go, run through.
Could be possible that they're no longer, that's what I'm saying.
And they don't always say, they don't usually say the reason. They might say one group's reason in the analysis, but they don't go through all of them. So, that's why it's.
That's helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. Abigail Ortega?
Oh, she asked the question that I had in mind, but I guess another question you may or may not know the answer is, it says that they're going to report every 3 years. Yeah, it just feels like so far away to know like the what's so with student, college level mental health right now. But yeah, it's just more of a comment than a question. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Abigail. Justin Haft?
Yeah, I do support this, but I am a little bit concerned that section 89360, subsection B, does not clarify mental health counselor in a way that maybe is specific enough. They note that anybody who provides referrals or outreach or consultation can be captured under that definition. I'm not sure if that would be, I think that might be too vague. Would not be ultimately able to provide adequate services. So sorry, to clarify, I do think we should be adding specific licenses.
Okay.
Clarification on the clarification, was it meant to be intentionally being broader because it also includes referral, like case working related and referrals, not just clinicals? I thought that was intentional for that reason to leave it open to include other not licensee clinical therapists.
And there's a medical health counselor definition, right, Roseanne? They define who would be providing these services. I think it's in that subsection B of 89360.
They define a mental health counselor, they don't define them by license types.
Right.
I think
I
that's
thought
probably
it
on
was
purpose.
intentional.
Right.
Yeah, we'll see.
Just briefly, my concern is if they bring in a bunch of people to provide essentially referrals, they're not then providing meaningful services. They're sending them elsewhere.
Okay. Susan?
It sounds as if the bill is asking for money for the internship and for money to increase the pipeline, but it doesn't say money specifically to students who want to go into this profession. And that's what we need more than anything. So I would recommend changing the money that they're suggesting.
It says, let me get to that part of the bill. It says that the funds appropriated may be used to provide paid internships for CSU students to complete supervised professional experience, or the funds could also be used to support recruitment efforts for students to enroll in a graduate program. So it kind of leaves that part vague.
Well, it's for recruitment, but then they don't give them money once they've recruited them. That's what they need, I think. I mean, a lot of students would do this
But-
if they paid for their education.
Well, I agree with you, Susan. I don't think that was the intention of the bill in terms like it will be a different aspect of the bill that's completely different because we don't get to, it's not our bill, that's what I'm saying. We can,
I realize that, but can we make that suggestion?
It doesn't, I think it's leaving it intentionally vague. It says funds appropriated may be used to support recruitment efforts. So it doesn't say what if that recruitment effort means paying somebody's tuition. It doesn't say if that means you're spending it on marketing to advertise that they have a program. So I think that they probably want to leave it intentionally vague, and they also don't know how much they're gonna get appropriated. So I don't know that, I think the board needs to decide if they're supportive of the bill or if they want to. I don't know that they're gonna accept a lot of different changes on things like that.
Thanks for the feedback. I'm going around and come to you. Then I have Dr. Leah Brew. I didn't know if you had raised hands. Okay, go ahead.
I'm in support of this. I think it's a timely bill. I think it's really important. A couple of reasons, just with the emergence of some of the more significant mental health diagnoses that come out at late adolescence, early college. We also have, the college age kids are one of the highest population for at risk for suicide. So I think that having, a mental health professional providing services on campus is great. I am reading, and Justin, maybe I'm not reading it correctly, but it does indicate that they need to be licensed by the state of California to provide the services. So I don't know if that was what you were referring to earlier or not, but that's how I read it. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
All right. So yeah, I think this is I think it's an opportunity again to increase the mental health professional reach, especially for CSU is a huge system. So having mental health access on campuses, I think, is really important. So I'm very much in support of this.
So that sounds like a motion to me, is it?
I will make a motion to support this bill.
Okay, wonderful. Just finishing up with the board. Yes, any other comments? I think Kelly was first and then you, Ross.
Go ahead, Russ.
I just wanted to second that motion.
Oh, you want, yeah, you can do that. Thank you.
No,
Yes, Kelly?
I would agree. I agree with Justin's comments as well as with Chris's. When you think about domestic violence and sex assault rates, there are two peaks. One is in early adolescence, and the other is around 17 to 21, where young women are going into college, and the need for mental health is extremely critical there. So, I support.
Thank you, Kelly Ranasinghe. Now we have a motion on the floor, and we have, John Savick.
I am concerned about the lack of definition in 89360B. I do think that potentially opens up some challenges in the future. Is there a way in your coordination with them to talk about that, or do we need that if amended?
You can do it either way. You can do support and ask that, the board had a little bit of concern about that but didn't want to not support the bill, or you could do a support if amended. If you feel that that's actually absolutely essential for the bill to move forward with your support, you could say support if amended to define mental health counselor.
Because one of the things I've noticed over time is we tend to do a lot of fixing undefined stuff constantly in here, where people are finding later on in legal counsel, like, hey, there was no definition. We've been doing that a lot over the years I've been part of this. So I'm just wondering if this actually is something that is important to put the definition in now. That's just my thought about support, potentially with amendment.
I think it's entirely up to you if you feel like that the staff could represent that, but if you want to make a stronger statement by making a different motion that has support if amended, we can also do that. Is that what you would like to do? We have already a motion, but you can do another motion and then we vote on both.
I was just commenting on the amendment on the proposal on the floor. It would be up to them if they want to add that or not.
Yeah.
I was just commenting on it.
For since we have a motion moved by you, so would you like to amend that to include it?
John, can I just ask clarification? Because as I read it, it says, the mental health counselor needs to be licensed in the state of California by an appropriate licensing entity. So can I ask what the what the concern is as far as it not being specific enough?
I think this is just addressing the idea that we are continually doing cleanup language, and that if this is dropped in now, that actually means we're being very specific about what we're saying. Because we're constantly doing cleanup language, and every time bills come up or rules and regulations are being looked at, we are doing a lot of cleanup language. And oftentimes it's around this very issue of specific definitions of what that means. So I think just adding a little bit of language that does make it more specific, maybe even putting in the Board of Psychology and BBS as those entities, makes it much more specific for future.
It would probably be medical board as well.
Well, right, I just said that.
So by specific, for clarification, John, sorry, you mean just naming out the agency that are carrying on the licenses? Is that what you're, before, do you like to continue the conversation before you answer to this? Okay. We have to still finish here and then I get back to you. So I believe the next one was Ross and then Kelly.
So I would say that, I mean, I would be a little concerned about doing the support only if amended, just because that's a strong language that I'd like to see this go forward. I do think that it might be appropriate to add in some language as just feedback. You know, it does say licensed in the state of California by the applicable licensing entity. If we want to define specifics, I defer to the group, but I mean, at least it's in there that it has to be a licensed individual.
Correct. Kelly, thank you. Russ?
Same comment as Russ. I think Roseanne could legitimately convey our concerns. The other thing is, reading it, technically they could hire all peer specialists. You know, they could just, because a peer specialist is going to be licensed by the state of California, they could just say, we're hiring 19 peer specialists, or they could also say, hey, we're hiring 19 MFTs.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. I'm going my left again. I have Wendy Strack first because she hasn't spoke before, and then I believe Abigail next.
I just want to be sure that as a part of this suggested change that we're not excluding having funding for the referrals and outreach and sort of case management supportive services piece, because that's an important part. So even if a student is receiving therapy, they need that sort of middle piece that helps them navigate the system, navigate things with their professors, navigate things with the university, that reflects, their therapeutic needs with respect to their education. So I want to make sure that we're not, in an effort to clarify licensing, then excluding funding for those purposes too, because that's an important piece of helping the student receive services while in school.
So if I may attempt to interpret, so in relations to the motion on the floor, you're okay the way it was presented? Okay. And then we have nobody else? Oh, Abigail, so sorry.
I'm having an issue with that it says California licensed mental health counselor. I don't think they necessarily have to be licensed. I think they could be registered, right? It's the same thing? Okay, just want to make sure, well.
No, it's not.
I mean, when I just went to the BBS on your end, I don't know if out there in the world, they're gonna understand that, like, you don't need a license, the L in front to be hired. And I think, there's a lot of need, and so an ASW, MFT, right, intern can under supervision, can also fulfill on those tasks. So I know there's no amendment that we're gonna add, but perhaps we can suggest that.
Right. So Roseanne is taking notes, and then Roseanne, would you like
I
to?
believe that the reason for that is they want them to have a minimum number of mental health licensed professionals, not just, all, the 1,500 be all associates or something like that. So
Everybody wants licensed people, there's not enough for all the schools, all of the hospitals. So it's just, we're just setting ourselves up to continue to say that there's a shortage and we're not using, all of our resources adequately, our workforce adequately.
Very good point. Abigail, I'm going to move forward with, and then we'll see if that needs to be reflected in the motions on the floor, or if you are happy with Roseanne conveying that concern. I would like to move to Dr. Brew. Thank you. Go ahead.
So Leah Brew, LPCC. I have worked in the CSU at one institution for 22 years. Right now, the wait list at our institution is 8 weeks. It usually peaks up around midterm and finals. So especially at finals, when we're talking about people leaving for summer, it's useless with 8 weeks. So thank you for supporting this. I hope that we can do not if amended, but with recommendations. And with regard to the conversation about associates and trainees, honestly, there are many states who have a model that have associates and trainees and psych interns. I know at our institution we have psych interns. And the more bodies we have doing this work, the better. And I think our trainees are absolutely qualified to do this work. And it's free labor except for the supervision part. And with the growth of telehealth, they can't use real estate, I guess. Like, we're landlocked, we can't grow, there's not enough offices, but there could be resources that provide telehealth. Another challenge is depending on who has been the director of the Counseling and Psychological Services group, will depend on who they will hire. So we have had at our institution where they only hired psychologists with psychology interns and have completely left out. And that is up to each institution. I don't know if you want to legislate that practice to, like, please be open to other professions, because there are a lot more BBS registrants and licensees than there are others. So just to let them know that. And then the final piece is money for recruitment is useless. The problem isn't recruitment. We have 700 applicants for 60 spots. There is no shortage of people who want this license. What the money should also be included for is growing programs, which means we have to hire full-time faculty to teach those students and have offices for those faculty and funding in order to teach classes. There is no problem, at least in 5 of the CSUs I know, with getting enough people to apply. We've got plenty of people who are qualified. I would say 50% of the 700 people are all qualified to go through our program based on GPA and interest. So the problem is the ability to admit more students. So if you would please let the authors, if that's okay with the board, know that that's the real issue. So I hope you all vote to support, not support if amended. Yeah, Ross?
There's an 8-week wait list to see it at the home?
Yes, unless you're in crisis, my students are telling me right now that they can't even get in until summer, until late June.
That actually surprised me. I thought it was even longer.
So a student comes in, I really need to see a therapist.
And they say,
Here's an appointment in 2 months?
they say, yeah, there's a wait list for eight weeks right now at my institution.
Do you have any idea how this law would, shorten that time?
I think the ratio, I did the calculation once, and because we're in a public venue on camera, I'm not going to give you a number, but it was woefully under 1,500 to 1 ratio, because we have about 43,000 students at my institution. So that is a lot of therapists, and I'm guessing, looking at the website, there's probably 20 or 30 people for 40-something thousand students. So it's woefully inadequate. And I'm like really interested in the student association who said they would they voted against it, because I know my students who are very involved in campus politics would totally support this, because there are a lot of mental health needs. And what a lot of what they're trying to do to supplement is like have a person who's doing counseling in the Women's Center or in the Diversity Center or in the Veterans Center or in the Disability Student Services. So we're trying to get it covered, but there's the ratio 1,500. I mean, think about it, 1,500. I'd say since COVID, 80% of our students have issues. Like, not that all 80 need to go to therapy. So right now they're referring students out because they can't wait 8 weeks to get therapy. And when you refer people out, a lot of those services aren't free. And especially for my students who can't go to the agencies they're referring to, because they're working at those agencies. So they have to, or their friends are working at those agencies. So the referrals don't work for anyone who's in our social work program or our MFT and LPCC program.
Dr. Brew, thank you so much for that piece of education. Really, very, very much appreciated. Thank you for waiting and be patient with us.
Okay, Rebecca Gonzalez, National Association of Social Workers, California chapter. I want to comment on some of the comments, I think, but we are in strong support of this bill. Couple of things. The Student Association opposition, I believe that was also in the previous version of the bill, and that had to do with their fear that if we prevented any contracting out, it would hurt services for students, but that part was taken out of the bill. The peers, they aren't licensed, they're certified by the state of California, so that wouldn't apply here. The 1,500 ratio, I know there are various studies that they use to try to come up with that number, but I think they're trying to come up with a reasonable number that they might be able to fill. There are some campuses that actually have really good ratios, and it's under that number. Some are way over, so it's all over the place. Let's see, what was the next one? As far as recruitment of students, I do think that's important as far as recruiting diverse professionals, because I think a lot of people who come from communities of color, you don't have exposure to professions at all. And there's also, stigma against mental health. So I do think that is well spent, and we do need our professionals to reflect the state of California. And also, as far as the possible paid internship piece, I think that's very important for social work, because the social work program, both undergraduate and graduate, has an extensive internship hours requirement, and I always have interns under me doing a macro internship, and so many of my students are struggling financially. They're going to school. I have MSW interns. They're getting their graduate degree. They are interning for us 3 days a week. A lot of schools have a 24-hour-a-week requirement. They have children, and they have another job. I mean, it blows my mind what obstacles they have in order to get their MSW. And as far as nationwide, there's a real call for paid internships. There's a whole movement out there about paying for internships across a variety of fields, but particularly in social work. So we are very supportive of this. We have an annual lobby day bill, or annual lobby days each year. We choose 3 bills, and this was one of our bills. Thank you.
Thank you again, Rebecca. Okay, bringing back to us, we have a motion on the floor that I'm assuming our proponent is not amending. It stands as it is, right?
Yes, with recommendations.
With recommendations. Then we had a second that was from Ross, and it confirms still attached to the motion. At this point, are there any other comments on the motion? Yes.
Okay, so with regard to the testimony that was just said, so just wanted to clarify, they're saying that the contractor versus employee, which the university is wanting, was taken care of, or is that still in limbo?
Limbo.
It's out of the bill. Okay, and then the other thing was recruiting, I'm sorry. I agree with that, diverse, professional, culturally sensitive professionals. And then also with having the clarification about, it sounded like it was also taken care of as far as licensed professionals included. And you can also include the students, so as far as learning, so.
Wonderful. That comment was coming from Eleanor Uribe. Any other clarifications needed? We're good? We have a motion on the floor. Christina? Kelly,
this is just one recommendation. I did check. I think the commenter was correct. It's a certification versus a license. So I would just ask that if we do recommend the bill for moving forward with recommendations, we also include a recommendation that would allow employment of certified peer specialists.
Is that a recommendation the board feel fit, or there are conversation around that?
Can you give me, why?
So certified peer specialists also provide mental health support in college environments. They operate as part of a mental health care team. If the board doesn't feel that's appropriate in this instance, I can withdraw that recommendation.
Mostly because it open, in my opinion, a different conversation about qualifications, so that the bill doesn't address in this instance.
I would say that, well, you know what, I'll
Okay, so the motion still stands. And any other comments, Roseanne?
I'd like to reiterate what the recommendations are, just to make sure that I have it.
Thank you.
Here's what so the motion would be to support the bill and then separately provide recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
The first recommendation would be to state, do you want to state that it's just the BBS Psych Board and Medical Board, or do you want to have them just specify in the definition of mental health counselor what licenses that entails and leave it at that? Do you want to just specify what licenses it entails?
That's your motion.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. And then also the second thing would be to, like the definition to also include registrants, trainees, and social work interns. And then the third that I heard, which was from Leah, was that also to include the funds provided should also suggest that it should be including growing programs, so that they can accommodate more people who apply.
Yes, the training programs for all licensees are very impacted because there's a lack of, I agree with Dr. Brew 100%.
Okay, and the fourth recommendation is to vote. Christina, can you please call the vote?
Yes.
We have another comments. Folks, if, go ahead.
So the other thing, and I don't think this would happen, but just so that it's proportionate, it's not all interns, you know, that there would be the licensed professional primarily. I'm assuming that will happen, so. Just so that it's not staffed primarily by interns, but, and I don't think that'll happen, but just.
That as a recommendation, clarification that you would like to send to Roseanne? Is that?
No, I'm okay with the interns, but like I said, that there would primarily be the licensed professionals.
Which is a given in the language
Yes.
already.
Yeah.
Is it?
She's
Okay.
just- yeah.
Okay. Folks, we need to vote. We have 15 more items to go, just to let you know. We want to do 10 o'clock p.m. I don't think we have rooms booked for tonight, right, Christina? Okay, go ahead. Thank you, Christina. Can you call the vote?
Eleanor Uribe,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Yes.
Abigail Ortega,
Yes.
Justin Huft,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Chris Jones,
Yes.
Max Disposti,
Yes.
John Sovek,
Yes.
Ross Ehrlich, Kelly Ronasinghe,
Yes.
Yvette Caceres Willis.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful. Thank you all for the passionate conversation. We're moving to item 26 on the agenda, which is discussion and possible action regarding SB 238, Congress Assembly Member Winner, Healthcare Coverage Independent Medical Review. Roseanne?
Yes, so under SB 238, what this is proposing, well, under current law, consumers have a right to request an independent medical review of their health insurance's plan, finding that a healthcare service is not medically necessary. But the process is that the consumer must first file a grievance with their health plan, and then they have to undergo a 30-day review process. And at that point, then if they don't like the outcome, they can decide to request an independent medical review. This bill seeks to reduce barriers to mental health care for children and young adults by making the independent medical review process automatic rather than consumer initiated for mental health treatment and substance use disorder treatment denials for children and young adults up to age 26. So under this bill, what that would look like is the healthcare plan, once they denied that treatment based on medical necessity, it would need to automatically submit its decision within 24 hours to the state's independent medical review system. And that's a system that's established in the state by the state. And the state contracts with them, and they need to be independent of any healthcare service plan or disability insurer. And they look at that, make a decision that's binding to the health plan and the insurer. So under this, the health plan would automatically submit it to that independent medical review system, and then the healthcare service plan or disability insurer must notify their enrollee within 24 hours after submitting the decision to the independent medical review system. Then they would need to provide them with copies of specified documents, as well as notice that they can, if they want to, they can cancel the independent medical review within 5 days. And also that the healthcare enrollee can provide additional information to the department and health plan insurer as one of their rights. So the author's intent with this bill is that right now, the consumer must initiate this review process after filing a grievance and going through a 30-day review, but it's based on they have to be the one to initiate it. And so a lot of times that doesn't happen, especially with their language barriers or things like that, or somebody maybe just doesn't understand the process. It's confusing, so it seems like, it's not something that they feel like they're able to do. So this would allow them to do that automatically. They note that a lot of independent medical reviews overturn denials, so it's just trying to increase the accessibility of mental health treatment for those under age 26.
Wonderful. Roseanne? Yes, Susan, first.
I think this is a really important bill. You look at, thank you. I think this is a really important bill. When you look at the opposition, it's mainly the insurance companies, and I think we should support this bill. So I make a motion that we support the bill.
And I'll second it. I agree. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, Dr. Walker seconds the motion of Susan. Any other conversations on the bill? I also agree what has been said. People struggle to have access, and insurance, they always find a way to second guess the needs of the people they're reaching out. It's an extensive length of time, and some people might put their life at risk for not even having to follow the process. So I'm very excited to support this bill as well. Any comments from the audience that would like to add their voice to it? Okay, straightforward. So we have a motion on the floor. Unless there are any other conversation, Christina, can you call the vote? Thank you.
Eleanor Uribe?
Or just come back to her.
I couldn't hear, I'm sorry.
Yvette Caceres Willis?
Okay.
Kelly Ronasinghe?
Yes.
Ross Ehrlich?
Yes.
John Sovek?
Yes.
Max Disposti?
Yes.
Chris Jones?
Yes.
Wendy Strack?
Yes.
Susan Friedman?
Yes.
Justin Huft?
Yes.
Abigail Ortega?
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker?
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe?
Okay, yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Folks, be patient with me. I'm dragging you through into lunch with one after another, and then we'll have time for a break. So I appreciate your patience. So we have agenda item 27 is the discussion possible action regarding SB 372, Mehivar, Department of Consumer Affairs, licensee and registrant records, name and gender changes.
Yes, thank you, Max. So under this bill, it would require licensing boards under DCA to update their records, including any records contained in its online license verification system, which for the board is Breeze, to include a licensee or registrant's updated legal name or gender, and make the former name and gender confidential when that licensee or registrant provides government-issued documentation that their legal name or gender has been changed. So under current law, boards under the Department of Consumer Affairs, including this board, are required to post certain public information on the internet regarding the statuses of every licensee. And the information required includes information on the licensee's status, disciplinary actions, address of record, and it needs to be in accordance with the California Public Records Act and also the Information Practice Act of 1977. So the board's process for a name change is in our own practice acts, and that requires, not a name change. A name change currently requires a license or registrant to provide the board with a written notice of the name change, giving both the old and new names within 30 days of the issuance of a new government-issued photo ID. The license or registrant must certify the information under penalty of perjury and provide the copy of the current issued government photo ID and a legal document authorizing the name change. And that could be something like a court order or marriage certificate, etc. And then the law, separate from California Business and Professions Code law, also sets forth a legal process for courts to follow when a person is petitioning to change their name to conform to their gender identity. And that law is outlined in the Code of Civil Procedure currently. So under this particular bill, the board would need to update the records, including records in the Breeze system, when the name when somebody does a name change, the board would need to remove the licensee or registrant's former name or gender, which the board does not collect information on gender on its application, so we don't post that on Breeze. But we do with names. So we would need to remove the former name from the online license verification system, and that would be confidential. The board would need to establish a process considering respect for the licensee or registrant's privacy and safety for providing the licensee or registrant's current name or enforcement actions linked to their former name if a consumer requested those enforcement actions or was searching by a previous name. And this would be required to be completed within 10 business days. Within 10 business days, the board would need to provide that person with the information that they were requesting. If requested, would require the board to reissue any documents to the licensee or registrant with their updated legal name and gender. And it would prohibit the board from charging a higher fee to reissue a document with a corrected or updated legal name or gender than it would charge for reissuing a document otherwise. And to request updating records with a legal name or gender change would require the person to provide just one of the following documents. It would be a state-issued driver's license or ID, a birth certificate, a passport, a social security card, or a court order indicating the change. And it says that a board is not required to modify records that the licensee or registrant has not requested to be modified or registered. So the author is seeking to protect the privacy and safety of transgender and non-binary Californians by eliminating the use of dead names in the DCA licensing system. They cite concerns that the transgender people experience high rates of discrimination and also can be in physical danger when disclosing this information. So they're trying to make it so that does not happen. So under our board's current system, when applying for a license, our applicants need to provide their legal name. And that's the name under which the license is issued. And then we post that name on our Breeze website, and that has all of their records, including when their license was issued, their status of the license, disciplinary actions, their address, things like that. So when a name is changed, typically what happens now is the board will update the Breeze system to include both the old and the new name. If the old name is searched by a consumer, then the old name will come up with a note that it is a previous name, and then if you click on the more detail for that particular licensee, it leads to a page that has the new name, the license number, and all of the information that would normally be available. If somebody searches by their current name, and they have a previous name, then the current name comes up on the record, and if you click the more detail, it'll take you to a page with all of the license details, and there will also be the old name will be on there, and it'll say in parentheses previous name. So that's how it currently works. But the law does not specifically require that the licensee's previous name disclosed. It doesn't specifically say that it needs to be on the Breeze online verification system as the previous name. It's silent on that matter. So it is possible within Breeze to designate an old name as private. If designated as private, the old name or the dead name would not appear in a public Breeze search. However, it would likely need to be disclosed due to the public nature of the information. For example, it would be subject to a Public Records Act request. So there's consumer protection interests to balance against the interests of a licensee who may wish not to disclose their old name, particularly in the case where they have a dead name, and then also to balance against how to handle where a licensee has passed disciplinary action on their record. And there's no statewide or DCA-wide approach to this, so that's what this bill is trying to address. Our current process for name change is a little bit different than what this bill prescribes. This bill prescribes just requiring one document be provided for a name change. And it has then once the name change is done, the name change is actually free, but then they need to submit a $20 fee for a replacement license or registration certificate that they have to show that they're licensed or registered. And that fee is standard. It doesn't change based on the reason for the request. It's just a $20 standard. But the board is currently required by its laws to obtain 2 documents to verify a name change, the current photo ID and then another legal document. The reason for that is we want to make sure that the photo ID has been changed, because when they go to take the exam, it's a problem if they don't have their California ID to show, because then they won't be admitted to the exam because the names don't match. But that can probably be, so it's unknown how that's going to interact with our laws, because we require 2, but that can probably be reiterated via outreach in our exam unit. We can probably, make people check a box or sign that, yes, I have my ID with my new name on it, so if I don't bring that, I'm not going to get admitted to the exam. I can't use my old name. And that would probably mostly clear that up. So I don't think that would be a huge problem. So one sort of thing with this bill is the confidentiality of the name change. Right now it's written so that the confidentiality applies to all name changes, not just dead name changes, or if there's a case where somebody fears for their safety. The way that it's written is the name change is confidential in all cases. So staff recommends that the bill specify the name change being confidential is allowable only under certain circumstances, like with the case of a name change to match gender identity, or another case of personal safety. We have 1,500 name change requests every year. The majority of them are not for a dead name or a safety concern, so I think it would be better to keep that to certain specified cases and not all cases. Like I said, we don't collect any information on gender, so that part of the bill is not really a concern, because we don't even ask for it on the application. They would fill it out if they wanted to in the survey, but that's aggregated and we don't have that specific information. So we're not putting their gender identity on their brief record. So just a couple of more kind of thoughts. For a licensee or a registrant with no past disciplinary record, the removal of a dead name from their record probably causes a very little public protection concern. A consumer might try to search their old name and they wouldn't be able to find it. And in that case, the consumer would either need to know the person's license number or would need to call the board to inquire if there was ever a licensee under this name. And in that case, the board would look it up and be able to provide that under the Public Records Act. However, there may be more of a public protection concern regarding removal of a person's dead name if that person had a past disciplinary record. The bill as it's now written appears to either require the board to remove disciplinary records using the old name and only provide them upon request by a consumer, or possibly to revise the court records to reflect the new name, which the legality of whether we can do that, we probably can't do that legally. And so that is the kind of the main issue of concern. So in terms of where this bill is at right now, it's been amended once. DCA is currently working with the author's office to provide technical assistance. We've provided the authors some technical assistance and worked with them so that they understand how the Breeze system works from our end, and have answered some questions for them about how it works and what the setup is. So we're kind of in that stage right now. I know that the author's office is trying to set up a stakeholder meeting in the coming months for all DCA boards because I think they're getting a lot of different feedback from different boards. So they've got some amendments that they're thinking about proposing, which would in fact limit it it would limit it to making the name confidential only if the person requested it, but that's not in print yet, so we don't know for sure if and when that's going to go forward. So we have to assume that we're looking at the version we see today. But they are discussing changes and are really trying to work with DCA to come up with the best option, is my understanding. So
Okay.
I'll open it up.
Roseanne, I would like to go first on this because I've been, thank you for also, go in detail about the challenges, about the whole process, because first of all, I support this bill. I would like to say that. I would like to move it forward because it's been too long on the waiting room. We need it. But also I would like to share with the audience and our fellow board members, the reason why this was challenging in one way, as progressive as it is because we kept that window open where if there is someone ill-intentioned to go back and out someone for their gender identity, we had that breeze portal that still allow people to go back. Those folks that have been investigated by the BBS, only for those people. Because in California, for those of you that know, if you change your records all the way up to the birth certificate, for whatever reason, but mostly around gender identity, the public has absolutely no access to it. It's prohibited by law for the state of California to have access to the previous records. Actually, they get deleted unless there is an investigation that has to do with a crime committed, if even necessary. So the standards are really high of protection. So I was concerned the first time this bill came around. I say, yeah, it's good, but we're leaving this door open where there are a lot of people going after our therapists that might be trans and nobody knows about it. So I like to see how the loop is closing. So I do support this bill, but I would like to add and insist on the recommendations, Roseanne, and I totally trust your advocacy on this because I've seen also this bill changing in a way to get better and better, to make sure that we take in consideration how we can limit to almost zero the opportunity for people to go back just because a licensee was under BBS, rules for whatever reason, that now their safety, the life safety I'm talking about, not the license, it's put at risk for no reason. So I like to see this moving in a way that the bill will leave almost zero chances for people to go back and inquire to the gender identity of a licensee that might be under supervision or investigations. And I appreciate the time. And then Ross.
So I agree with you.
So, sorry, I'm making a motion in support of the bill. I apologize. Go ahead.
I agree with all of the intentions of this bill. My concern is the consumer protection in the sense that, you can't look up and get if there was any prior disciplinary action by the board, and I think that that's very concerning for myself. I think that the members of the public should be able to have access to see if someone's been disciplined. So it's my understanding now that that would not be able to be done under this current iteration of the bill. Is that correct?
No.
They would need to.
Unless they contact the board, ask the board to.
The board would need to have a process in which somebody could contact the board to find out if somebody had a past disciplinary record.
And I don't know that if I'm comfortable that somebody cannot access that online in terms of a name search as they can with almost, I think, every other board in the state of California. I think that consumer protection.
It would supersede California law, though, if we do that, because California law fully protects the privacy of gender identity. So there is that issue. Second, there were a lot of conversations around the fact that you can still search, but now you have a number, which is the license and not necessarily the gender identity or the name of the person, that name, right? So you can know that that person had an infraction in 2000, but it's the number, the license. You don't need to know what their identity was at that time or their name. Second, and I'm sorry about my passion about this because I see a lot of safety, the life of safety oversees the possible incrimination. There are people, there has to be valid reasons that could be the safety of another person in case for going after someone because of their gender identity in order to find who they were at the time, which is completely relevant to the case of investigations. If you committed a crime, you committed a crime. That you were a woman, a man, or non-binary, or what your name was completely relevant. So my concern is actually that window still opens, which is the opposite of yours, Russ. But I just want to remind that it's not just for consumer protection, because we are here to represent that, so I'm not losing it. There is the element of the life comes first in regards to protecting people from not being targeted in the process of getting justice, right? For those that have caused harm in our profession as well. So John Savek, and then I saw Abigail over there.
I'd like to second the motion to support the bill. And Steve, can I ask you a clarification question? In looking up disciplinary actions, can that lookup be connected to the actual licensee number versus a name?
Yeah, that's what I was.
Okay, thank you.
Abigail Ortega?
Yes, I'm curious about the California Board of Psychology opposing this bill.
Right. They opposed on the consumer protection concern ground that they felt that the disciplinary records needed to be posted, is my understanding. There was another board that I just found out, and it was the Speech, Language, and Pathology Audiology Board. They took an oppose unless amended, and their position was interesting. They asked for, the amendment that they wanted was that the discipline documents, that's where the name is, would be, that's what the name is, shows up in all of the court disciplinary documents. So if it's a dead name and if it was prior discipline, the dead name would show up in the disciplinary documents. Their suggested amendment was just strike out every instance of the dead name. So basically the disciplinary document would appear, but it would have no name in it. It would be striked out. So I don't know how the legislature's attorneys would feel about that, but that's their particular suggestion that I thought was interesting that they just took.
I mean, I tend to like that amendment, or at least that language as far as supporting the bill, that, you know, if there's a way, which it sounds like there may be able to remove all references to any name or gender identifying language so that you can see the past disciplinary action. I mean, because I agree. I mean, I'm all for the bill, but for this, you know, hey, oh, I knew a therapist here, search, look them up if you know, I need a therapist. Probably saw him years ago, look him up online, this person up, and there's no record, you know, you can't find the record. I think it's just the public, you deserve a right to see disciplinary documents. So if we can have language in there, like oppose, well, that would be a separate motion.
I wouldn't, I don't agree with that, so I wouldn't change my motion. I will make a recommendation that goes in that sense of, you know, the concern about, but again, my concern is the opposite. Yours, obviously, because you represent the legal experience as well. I would say, though, that even from the legality standpoint of view, these are therapists. They are actually licensed, and they pay the price of their own whatever, you know, have caused in the past. So there's also been a lot of conversation about how much for how long my disciplinary actions needs to be on the record after I've been paying my duty of, you know, be compliant, for instance. So I leave the motions how it is, but I know that I have confidence in the staff picking up those concerns and definitely bringing in the conversation, but I don't want to approve if amended, thank you, because I think it's a strong message that actually slows down the process when this has been, right now what's happening, that people are out there all the time, even a small minority of people, and we're putting at risk the life of our trans and non-binary folks. So I have an urgency to pass that, in my personal opinion.
And I had a question. I'm not sure if during your dealings with the author's office or anything, has anybody addressed the National Practitioner Database issue?
No.
That's the other kind of twist in this, is that all of our boards report to National Practitioner Database, discipline, and I'm not sure how that would shake out.
Right, there is always an
Right.
opening.
So, yeah, and I'm not sure if that's been part of the discussions.
We have no jurisdictions over that.
I'm also hearing that it is like an extra step people have to take, like the information is not being removed, right? People are not being told, you're not going to, you know, we can't disclose it. There will be disclosure, it's just an extra step.
Mm-hmm.
It would basically be like a Public Records Act request, so they would need to contact us, and we have to, under the PRA, provide the information. It would just be that they needed to, it's not gonna be readily available on the website. They would need to call the board and say, hey, I'm requesting this information.
Yeah, and so on the board's end, the process has to be so easy and seamless and like time effective to where it's not a big deal. You know, that, you know, they click an extra button or send an email and they get a response with, you know, so I think if we're gonna create that extra step for protection, right, of the therapist in this case, and also honoring, right, the laws in place to disclose this public information, that we do it in the easiest manner. I mean, I hear a win-win. That's just me.
Thank you, Abigail. Wendy Strack?
Just a question for Steve, I guess. Is there anything stopping the board now from, once a discipline case is complete and it sort of goes into the record system, maybe for everybody, maybe it's just a license number, and for everybody, names and all that are out, and so if somebody searches a license number, I mean, is there anything stopping us from doing that for everybody, I guess, on our own?
You mean if they just using a license number per se instead of a
Yeah,
name?
like just that all the discipline documents would just not refer to people by name. Is there anything stopping us from doing that now?
No, we have, by law, we have to disclose, to license these names.
Okay,
And then,
so yes.
The law stops.
That's, it's part of the privilege. You know, you become licensee, you're under the DCA umbrella and subject to those laws. And so we do have a law that we have to make those public.
I would also add that who here knows their therapist business license number? Like, that's also not fair to the public.
Thank you, Abigail. I don't see, yes?
Eleanor Uribe.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have some questions. One, it says, as far as protecting, I don't know the verbiage right now, but I know I read it. But it seems like there's a couple issues. So one issue is to basically protect the therapist from, you know, criminal things happening to them. And I would say that would be important for everybody. But because it is illegal to stalk, harass, and threaten, and that's what the concern is, that someone's going to stalk, harass, and threaten somebody. So I would say, you know, that's important for everybody. As far as the, you know, I think there should be some type of, you know, even if you have to take that extra step, if there is the background, you know, there should be, the client should be able to have access to that, even if they had to probe a little bit. The other question I had was, as far as the, let me see, so say, for instance, patient preference. I don't know currently, do we state, I know you said we don't state gender, do we state sex?
No.
We don't, okay. Sometimes I know insurance companies will ask someone who's looking for a therapist, like, do you have any preferences? And so it could be lots of different things. It could be, you know, license like LCSW, LMFT, you know, it could be, you know, certain languages, it could be expertise, right? And it could also be, let's say, it could be religious, and it could even be sex. So I would say in the case of, like, say somebody who might have been raped or somebody who might have been, you know, abused or domestic violence victim, I would just say that might be important for them. I'm just saying it might be important for them to know, because it could put them in a precarious position. You know, it's a vulnerable person coming for help. And especially sometimes our clients are maybe not educated on the system and what to do. And I guess that would be a little concern, a big concern, just that I wouldn't want to put somebody in a precarious position where they're like, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying, I mean, you don't know. But that could be one thing. I think there might have been one more, but let me look. I was glad to hear that in the case that people who have a history of violence in their background, there can be a request to have protection, because that was another question. Is because it's, in a sense, it's you know, to protect them, but it also might open the door too for someone who's divorced, and you can say, hey, I would like to have my name changed. I don't know. I'm just saying that it might set a precedence. I think that might be it right now. Yeah.
Thank you, Eleanor. Are any comments from the audience, please? Thank you. Oh, there was someone else from the board? I apologize. No, okay. Right.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca Gonzalez, National Association of Social Workers, California chapter. This bill is co-sponsored by the professional associations who are usually here, NASW, CAMPT, and the LPCC Association. We came together and sponsored this bill because we were hearing from our members who were concerned about this issue, people in the trans community that felt that they needed to have these protections from, potential violence or outing or, any kind of aggressive kind of behavior against their community. And so we felt that was really important. As was mentioned before, this bill could also include others, such as a victim of domestic violence who, changed their name, and they could go and have that be protected. But all of these things are upon request. So it's not going to be like every woman who changes her name because she gets married. I do agree that, and this bill I want to point out, it's not just the BBS, it's Department of Consumer Affairs wide, which does present a lot of implementation issues and challenges. And so currently there are a lot of meetings going on behind the scenes with the sponsors of the bill and the Department of Consumer Affairs trying to all get on the same page to figure out what's going to work. The bill does have the clause that the board has to develop a process, so we're giving, the board some ability to try to figure out how to accomplish this in the best way possible. But for a number of years, the California Bar Association has had a process for people who have changed their gender so that there could be some, back channel way if it's really, that protects the person's identity, but could provide some potential consumer disclosure information. I don't know if I reflected that correctly, Roseanne.
Yeah, do you want to go into a little bit of what that is?
I think maybe you should.
We talked a little bit about this in our
Right.
past meeting. Yeah, I can go, when you're done talking, I'll.
Okay. But I did want to, point that out. I do think this is a really important bill. There still is work going on, and, bills have until mid-September to go to the governor's desk, and I assume that this bill will be developing as it goes through the process.
Thank you. Leah Peru.
Sorry, this cord is starting to get dangerous here. I was worried Rebecca was going to slip. There we go.
Don't destroy that.
Leah Brew, LPCC member and counselor educator. I hope that the board supports this bill. I have a lot of students who are trans, whether non-binary or fully transitioning, male to female, female to male. And I guess with regard to, let's say, a woman who is a survivor of rape and is looking for a female therapist, I really believe that a trans woman can be as equally helpful. Having spoken with a lot of my students who have done transitions and full transitions, they have always identified with the gender that they are. And so I believe that safety already exists in that aspect. This is needed really, really badly right now, especially as we look at what's happening in other states. And I'm thinking about the telehealth committee talking about reciprocity or doing, cross-state lines and how scary that is about the way other people are getting trained. My hope is that the board will protect our trans practitioners here in this state. And I think there is a way, even if I don't know the license number of my therapist, which I don't, I have my own therapist, I can, if there's a way that I can contact the board and say, hey, I know this person was my therapist and they're not coming up in the system, then I think that there can be safety there with an issue. And then I also have a thought about, like, once somebody has gone on probation, got off of probation, even now the board can't consider 7 years of convictions in the past, that's done. So unless they're in a current process, that's a little bit more complicated. But for something that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago, I'm not sure that that's really relevant today. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brew. Any other comments? Yes.
Good morning, Kristen Roscoe from the California Association of Marriage and Family Therapists. As Rebecca noted before, we are very proud to co-sponsor this bill with our colleagues at NASW and CalPIC. I just wanted to acknowledge that our colleague GV from CalPIC was unable to be here today. He was attending to a family emergency, and I know he wanted to speak in support of this bill as well. But you know, this bill for us just acknowledges that CAMPT members change their names. As we heard, it happens for a host of reasons, and for some it's a very joyous reason, but reflecting back on that dead name can be very harmful, and the harm that can flow from having that available, hopefully not for violent reasons, but it could happen, is just, you know, truly underpinning our support of this very important bill, and we really appreciate the board's support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe there was just coming back to the board, was it Kelly? And then Rosanna, John Savak too, after.
So initially my comments were similar to Russ's, and I was trying to wrap in my head the idea of the board member's statutory mandate to always affirm the public protection. But, you know, in thinking about this, for our therapists who have changed their names and are trans, it is not an unreasonable inference to think that many of them adopt advocacy roles, and that places them at heightened concern for threats to their safety. And I think ultimately, the access to disciplinary documents, that is an operational issue which can be addressed with the state, you know, like the state bar, like speech and language pathology. I really like Board Member Ehrlich's idea of simply sterilizing the document, so that information is accessible without threat of harm to the licensee or professional. But I would support the bill with those comments.
Thank you. And then John Savak.
Since I seconded the bill, I think it's obvious that I'm in support of this bill. For someone who is part of the LGBTQ community, a queer person myself, who also works with many trans and non-binary youth, we are looking at a movement here in the United States of America where over 400, at this point actually over 540 anti-LGBTQ bills have been introduced in state legislatures on record currently. Over 220 of those specifically target transgender individuals and non-binary people simply for being and existing as who they are. These laws are banning gender-affirming care, not just for youth now, but also for adults. It's allowing situations where people can officially be misgendered by the people in their school systems. It also is creating a movement that is looking at marginalizing and actually suppressing and making my community disappear. We talk about taking an extra step. A trans non-binary person, simply by them trying to live their affirmed life, are forced to take extra steps every single moment of their existence and breath. I think putting that burden out into the cisgender heteronormative community and allowing them to take on a little bit of that burden with my trans and non-binary community, I think is the least we can ask to be a state where we are trying to support this movement, trying to create a space where trans and non-binary people can move from what we always talk about as a painful situation, you know, what's happening in the USA right now, to look at it being a euphoric situation where their gender and non-binary status is being celebrated, is being recognized, is being affirmed, and I think this bill is a very simple step towards that. Understanding that we are going to struggle with the implementation on a government level, on a bureaucratic level, but this creates a space we are taking a step forward saying, yes, and let's address that bureaucratic energy and make it affirming to the trans community.
Okay, sounds like a support. Yes, Eleanor?
Sorry, a couple of questions, a couple of comments. So, a question about if you have somebody who is has transitioned and say they would like to transition back, is that something that what would happen?
I don't think the process applies equally. It doesn't matter how many times people transition. It's my sense.
Okay. And then again, you know, I think as far as, I still feel there's different, I feel there are almost some separate issues as far as safety, and I totally believe in safety, you know, but I would hope that it wouldn't be put forward as in fear, you know what I mean? Because safety is everybody's important, so, but, yeah, so I just wanting to just speak that out, and, yeah, I mean, regardless of whatever my vote is, I feel safety is important, and that should never happen to anybody. So that's it.
No. Yeah. Yes, Abigail.
Just to clarify, when you say transition, you mean like they change their name back? Or-
So I'm aware of some people who've actually transitioned, and they've actually tried to transition back. So they've actually changed their name back.
I just for the record, I just as an agency that serves thousands of trans people, it's interesting. These things happen to everybody else, but not to me. I haven't met anyone like that. But there is a lot of narrative about detransition, which is not even a term that even trans people adopt, just for the record, because transition is a constant move of our journey. So there is not a point A to B and B to A. It's just a journey that people experience. So the term detransition is actually a term was a very to target the trans community to delegitimate the identity. I'm not saying you're doing that, Eleanor, by any means. I'm just saying for the record, listening to that concern raises other things that are not factual. And then the element of safety, which I totally agree with you, and I picked a lot that you said that it's an element that right now the only people that are not safe are our trans and non-binary people in relations to not having a law that protects their journey. So exactly for what you were saying, so I wanted to reconfirm that. So
And my apology for, I don't know the terminology. I'm
No, it's fine.
just saying the specific person I'm saying identified as, I guess, the original gender or different.
Sure.
And I know you said it's fluid, so
Sure.
so excuse me. Pardon.
No, it's okay. This was not meant to be a personal reprimand. It was just an opportunity for us to educate folks since we're in public record. But Justin, not longer. Anyone else? Any other comments? We really need to vote, folks. And then we can agree to disagree. That's okay too. We're good. We can go to vote. Yeah, Roseanne was going to.
Can you restate the motion? So
Yes, thank
it's a
you.
support position, but was there any technical assistance you wanted, or just plain support?
No, for me, it was plain support with, with the continued work of changing and supporting the conversation around the bill. And I believe that was the second too for John. Yeah, okay. Okay, Christina.
Yvette Caceres Willis,
Yes.
Kelly Ronasinghe,
Yes.
Ross Ehrlich, John Sovek,
Yes.
Max Disposti,
Yes.
Chris Jones,
Yes.
Wendy Strack,
Yes.
Susan Friedman,
Yes.
Justin Huft,
Yes.
Abigail Ortega,
Yes.
Dr. Annette Walker,
Yes.
Eleanor Uribe.
No.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And folks, I believe we ordered lunch for, if I'm correct, for now. The question to you all is, we could take a nice lunch, which is 12:10, and maybe resume at 12:45. If you want to go even at 1 o'clock, but then, we'll stay later. So it's entirely up to you. But looking around, is 45 minutes okay? So it's 12:10. We resume at 1 p.m. Yeah.